Good evening, everyone. If you could please get seated, we will begin this meeting. And I would like to start tonight with land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood Planning Commission acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tonga and Gabrielino Quiche peoples. It is now 6:32 p.m., and I would like to call this regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting to order. And that brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chair Gregoire, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda this evening is the administration for the oath of office to directly reappointed Planning Commission meetings. And I believe that we are graced with our mayor today. So Mayor Byers will be leading us in the oath of office. And we'll have a group.
Yes, if we can just have the reappointed members just stand at their seats and then repeat after Mayor Byers.
You can call me Chelsea. Hi, everyone. So honored to be here to do this with you all. Thank you for the allowing me to be here. You know the drill. You're all getting reappointed. So you raise your right hand. You'll repeat your name after I say state your name, and then I'll sort of give you breaks, and we'll go from there. So I state your name. Great. Do solemnly swear that while serving in the office as a member of the Planning Commission of the City of West Hollywood, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Byers. And congratulations to everyone that's been reappointed. It's been a pleasure serving with you all, and I'm glad that you're all still here. Item number 4 on the agenda is approval of the agenda for this.
Roll call, please.
Oh, let's do roll call first. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Meadows.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Present.
Commissioner Carvalero. Here. Vice Chair Gregoire. Chair Lombardi.
Present.
And we have a 7-member quorum.
Thank you. Okay, now item number 4, approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion for tonight's agenda?
All move approval. I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Matos and seconded by Commissioner Carvalero.
I'd like to make a comment. I would like the record to state my original vote of no on the consent item.
Okay. Anything else before we vote? Okay, thank you.
And the agenda is approved unanimously, approving the agenda for Thursday, April 3rd, 2025 as presented.
Thank you. Item number 6 is approval of the minutes. This is the draft verbatim minutes from March 6th, 2025.
I move approval.
Motion by the Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Jones.
And the motion passes unanimously, approving the minutes for March 6, 2025 as presented.
Okay, item number 7 is public comment. This is for any general public comments, so this would be items that are not included in the public hearings. Do you have anyone in Zoom or in person that would like to make a general public comment?
We have no one in Zoom. I do have one in chambers here, Stephanie Harper. Stephanie, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners and members of the public. Stephanie Harper, City of West Hollywood. I just want to bring up again the issue with the French Marketplace. I sent one of the Commissioners a picture. I'm sorry I forgot to send it into your Secretary, David Gillig, your fabulous Secretary, David Gillig. Nothing's been done. It's gotten worse. It is blighted. You could show it to a 5-year-old child and they'd probably say, yeah, that's blighted. We heard from that developer how they were going to put a beautiful mural in, and they had an excellent woman artist who was going to put the painting on. And I said, how about French Market, which has been sitting for, 10 years now, I think, which is sad because we all could have been enjoying it until they actually had a project, which they don't, apparently. And I just think something should be done about it. And I don't know why we don't hold their feet to the fire. Anyone, let's see how long it takes to get that beautiful mural that they're promising on what was formerly the Arts Club. It really looks bad. It's bad for the city. It's bad for the morale of the neighborhood. And we'd like somebody to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, there are no other public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8 is the Director's Report.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. Nick Marisich, Director of Community Development, and I have a mercifully brief report for you tonight. First, I want to start by congratulating our reappointed members. Thank you for raising your hands to continue to serve, and we look forward to carrying on our work together on the important matters that come before this body. Next, I can report that on March 17th, the Council reviewed the 2024 annual progress reports for the general plan and housing element and authorized staff to submit those to the state. I'd like to thank long-range planning staff, and in particular Tahira Ferris, Senior Planner, who's also acting long-range planning manager for tonight, for all her work on this. And as requested, we plan to bring these reports to the Planning Commission as an informational item on a future agenda, so stay tuned for more on this soon. And finally, as many of you already know, I want to note that I will be out of the office on parental leave starting later this month. And while I'm on leave, our Assistant Director, Jennifer Alkire, will be serving as the Acting Director of Community Development. As you know, you will be in excellent hands with Jennifer, and I'm very grateful to her for filling in for me during this time. This concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations. I wish you well. Sounds very exciting. Do we have any questions for our Community Development Director before we may not see him for a while?
Congratulations, you will be missed. Thank you for everything you do for the city.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10A, public hearing, section 1, project subject to...
Apologies, Chair. Before we move to item 10, I did want to note...
Sorry, I skipped over 9A. So, item 9A, zone text amendments, expanded noticing engagement for development agreements. This is on the consent calendar, and because there's a resolution included, we do need to formally vote on it, and I'm just looking at the wrong portion of the page, so that's why I skipped over it. So, we can make a motion at this time, or if there's something that needs to be discussed, please, Vice Chair, would you like to approval of the draft resolution? Okay, Vice Chair has made a motion for approval.
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Solomon.
And the motion passes, noting 4 ayes and 3 noes. Noting Commissioner Hoopengarner, no. Commissioner Matos, no. And Commissioner Jones, no. There is no appeal process. This is an item going before the City Council, approving resolution number PC 25-1593.
Okay, thank you. Item 10A, public hearing, section 1, project subject to the Housing Accountability Act, and this is 910-916 North Weatherly Drive. This is an appeal to the Director of Community Development's approval, and we're now going to have a public hearing to consider all pertinent testimony on the appeal filed, which is the approval of a minor amendment to previously approved 7-story, 89-unit, 100% affordable multifamily residential project. And I believe we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Roger Rath, and I'm here to present the appeal of the Community Development Director's approval of a minor development permit amendment to a previously approved 89-unit, 100% affordable housing project located at 910-916 Weatherly Drive. So the presentation is going to be about 19 to 20 slides long. I timed it to try to get it completed by 18 minutes, so I'll try to be concise as much as possible. So to briefly recap the timeline, the Planning Commission initially approved this project in November 2023, and that the decision was affirmed by the City Council in February 2024 with resolution number 24-011. So what exactly was approved? The approval was to merge 3 lots located near the intersection of Weatherly Drive and Cynthia Street, the demolition of all existing structures on site, and the construction of a new 7-story, 89-unit, 100% affordable multifamily residential building over 3 levels of subterranean parking, with 3 modification requests to setbacks. This qualifies as a 100% affordable housing as defined by the West Hollywood Municipal Code. Because this is a 100% affordable housing, it is eligible for significant incentives and concessions in accordance with the state density bonus laws and the West Hollywood Municipal Code. The original approval granted a density bonus allowing an additional 72 units and an additional 3 stories or 33 feet in additional height and a waiver of parking requirements. Although no parking is required, the applicant has provided 62 parking spaces on site. These incentives were previously approved and are not subject to this amendment or appeal. As part of the original entitlement, the project was granted 4 concessions under the state density bonus law. One was elimination of the additional 6-foot setback for upper stories beyond the front yard. 2, a 26 reduction in common and private open space. 3, flexibility in the location of common open space. And 4, allow for non-residential parking for the adjacent church. Like the density bonus incentives, these concessions were previously approved and are not subject to this amendment or appeal. The project was also approved with 3 modifications. 2 modifications for a 10% or 1-foot reduction to each side yard setback, and a 10% or 1 foot 6 inches reduction to the rear yard setback. These modification requirements of the code live in Chapter 19.60 of the West Hollywood Municipal Code, where parameters are set on what constitutes a variance and what constitutes a modification. A modification is an adjustment of no more than 10% to the standards of the zoning code. Anything that exceeds that 10% limitation requires a variance application. Like the incentives and concessions, these modifications were part of the original entitlement and are not being added to, removed from, or altered by this amendment. In short, none of these previously approved elements are under review tonight. Affirmed by the City Council in early 2024, the applicants submitted plans for building permits review on November 1st, 2024. As the project entered the structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing review phases, often referred to as MEPs. Several adjustments were identified to ensure compliance with state building code and to resolve technical conflicts. To address those items, the applicant filed a development permit amendment application on January 31st, 2025. The applicant submitted a development permit amendment that includes refinements that was categorized and listed here. These include relocation of the transformer, adjustment to the certain studio units and balconies, reconfiguration of the parking, bicycle, storage area, lobby, and unit layouts, changes to windows and doors, relocation of permeable surfaces, and mechanical and utility updates. These kind of refinements are not unusual at this stage. Many projects return for minor amendments as details emerge through the more rigorous plan check process. The key is that these changes stay consistent with the original entitlement. Each of these changes were evaluated against the city's criteria for a minor amendment, and staff determined that the changes met the intent and threshold outlined in the West Hollywood Municipal Code, making the amendment appropriate for approval at the staff level. As such, the amendment was approved by the Director of Community Development on February 13th, 2025. Although not required, the item was placed on the Planning Commission consent calendar on February 20th as a courtesy to the public, given the community interest in the project. The step was taken for transparency, not as a formal approval process. On February 24th, 2025, a timely appeal was then filed, which takes us to now. The overall appeal raises two central arguments. One, the amendment should have been classified as a major amendment, and that two, that the amendment as proposed should not be approved. To avoid misinterpreting the appellant's concerns, staff has broken the appeal into 9 individual assertions in order to respond to each point clearly and directly. The first appeal assertion argues that the amendment should have been proposed during the entitlement phase and that the original project was already impactful due to a variance. First, it's important to clarify that the project frequently undergoes technical adjustments after entitlement, particularly during structural and safety review at the building permit stage. These are not design changes for preference. They're refinements to ensure compliance with the state building code, life safety, and engineering requirements. This is common.
Okay, if everyone can please
Chair,
get seated.
we are good to go.
Thank you. Okay, if we are good to go, then we will pick back up again, and we were on item 10A, 910, 916 South Weatherly Drive, and I believe we are going to pick up in the staff's presentation right around after the general background on the project, just to make sure that we have some overlap due to the connection loss earlier. So back to the applicant's presentation. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone for your patience. So yes, I will be repeating this appeal assertion slide just to kind of make sure that nothing's been missed or if something wasn't heard. But if you heard this already, obviously you have, sorry for the repetition. So the overall appeal raises two central arguments. One, the amendment should have been classified as a major amendment, and that the amendment, as proposed, should not be approved. To avoid misinterpreting the appellant's concerns, staff has broken the appeal into 9 individual assertions in order to respond to each point clearly and directly. The first appeal assertion argues that the amendment should have been proposed during the entitlement phase and that the original project was already impactful due to a variance. First, it's important to clarify that projects frequently undergo technical adjustment after entitlement, particularly during structural and safety review at the building permit stage. These are not design changes for preference. They're refinements to ensure compliance with the state building code, life safety, and engineering requirements. This is a common part of the development process. Second, and more critically, the original project did not include a variance. It was approved with 3 modifications to setbacks. The second appeal assertion argues that the amendment included too many changes to be considered minor and therefore should have been processed as a major amendment. However, the number of changes is not how the municipal code defines a major amendment. Under the West Hollywood Municipal Code, section 19.62.070, an amendment is considered major only. I'm sorry about that. So what I was saying was, so under the West Hollywood Municipal Code, section 19.62.070, an amendment is considered.
Should we take a couple of minutes?
Maybe we could try.
Let's give it one more try.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So under the West Hollywood Municipal Code, section 19.62.070, an amendment is considered major only if it meets one or more of 5 specific criteria, as shown on the screen. In this case, none of those criteria were met. These changes do not cause a significant impact to the surrounding neighborhood, do not cause a significant environmental impact, do not alter the project's use or design in a substantial way, do not change the basis on which an environmental determination for the project was made, and do not affect the original findings of approval. An in-depth analysis of each of these points is provided in the staff report. While the amendment includes multiple refinements, they are all individually and collectively consistent with the scope of the original entitlement. As such, the director determined that the amendment qualifies as a minor amendment and was properly approved at the staff level. In short, the quantity of changes does not determine whether an amendment is major. It's about the impact of those changes. And in this case, no significant impacts were found. The third appeal assertion objects to the relocation of the transformer from its previously approved below-grade location to a surface-mounted pad at the northwest corner of the site near the sidewalk and adjacent residence. The appellant also claims that the Southern California Edison, or SCE, did not require this change and that staff misrepresented that. To clarify, SCE did not require the transformer to be relocated, but it did review and confirm that the new location complies with its operational access and safety standards. Staff never stated that SCE mandated the change, only that SCE reviewed and accepted the location as compliant. Although staff typically recommends placing transformers underground when feasible, there is no objective standards in the city's municipal code requiring this. In this case, the decision to relocate the transformer above ground was made by the applicant to avoid losing up to 16 parking spaces that would have been eliminated due to the structural demands of the underground enclosure. While the city supports below-grade placement when possible, SCE generally prefers transformers to be located above ground to allow easier access for servicing, inspection, and emergency response. From a utility operation standpoint, this location is more practical and widely accepted. Regarding concerns about the visual and noise impacts, the transformer will be housed in a green, sound-dampening enclosure designed to meet both SCE and city requirements. Transformers like these are routinely located in front yards of residential and urban projects, and the city has not received any complaints from the surrounding neighbors regarding transformers placed in similar locations. These installations are designed to operate safely and quietly. In other words, this is not an unusual condition or a cause for concern. It's something that the city sees regularly, and it has not presented a nuisance, safety risk, or aesthetic conflict in comparable settings. In addition, the transformer will be screened with landscaping to help soften its visual presence from the public right-of-way. The final landscape palette is being reviewed for compatibility with the site and neighborhood context, but screening is required, and the city will ensure it is appropriately integrated. Finally, no evidence was submitted to demonstrate that a transformer at this location would result in a nuisance, excessive noise, or incompatibility with the neighborhood. The fourth appeal assertion states that the transformer relocation results in the loss of trees and reduction in green space. However, this is not accurate. What was originally approved included 6 trees on site, as shown on the slide. The revised plans, as part of this entitlement, now proposes 11 trees, but throughout the entire property. Again, this is a net increase in trees, not a reduction. While the transformer relocation did require some adjustment to the layout of the landscape plan, the updated planting plan is and will continue to be consistent with the city's landscaping standards. The fifth appeal assertion claims that the removal of the green roof reduces environmental benefits and design quality. To clarify, the original project did not include a green roof that was publicly accessible or a landscape amenity space. The green roof was one of 3 options from the green building standards outlined in the West Hollywood Municipal Code. These options are a green roof, renewable energy systems, or solar thermal systems. The updated design will meet the city's green building requirements as conditioned in the original approval. If the applicant chooses not to pursue any of these 3 required options, the project will be required to return to the Planning Commission for further review. The sixth appeal assertion raises concerns about the revised balcony design, claiming it reduces design quality. The amendment includes a net reduction from 47 to 45 balconies, along with adjustments to improve privacy and satisfy the California Building Code requirements. Many balconies on the north and south sides were shifted or reduced, while others were relocated to the east and west, where greater setbacks offer more separation from the neighboring properties. These changes were reviewed by the city urban designer, who confirmed that the architectural character, massing, and materials remain consistent with the approved design. The project continues to meet objective standards for private open space under the zoning code, and under the Housing Accountability Act, the city cannot deny or condition the project based on subjective aesthetic preferences when those objective standards are met. So in summary, the revised balcony layout improves functionality, maintains the approved design integrity, and remains fully code compliant. The seventh appeal assertion objects to the removal of a 423 square foot fitness room. However, there is no requirement under the West Hollywood Municipal Code that mandates specific amenities like a fitness room. As a Housing Accountability Act project, the applicant has discretion over amenities allocation as long as the project meets all objective zoning and open space standards, which it does. The fitness room was removed and replaced with a unit from the second floor to preserve all residential units and increase usable courtyard open space. Other amenities, including a community room, rooftop areas, and a dog run, remain available to the residents. The eighth appeal assertion claims that the transformer location violates the city's seismic setback requirements. While this site is located in the Fault Precaution Zone 1, the 50-foot setback only applies to habitable structures, not equipment like a transformer. The transformer is compact, non-habitable, and will be installed on a concrete pad that complies with all seismic safety standards. Southern California Edison reviewed and approved the placement, confirming it meets safety and accessibility requirements. The location is necessary for utility access, and there's no violation of the city's seismic regulation. Also, I wanted to confirm that the red line indicated in this photo here is not the fault line. However, a setback line indicating a distance of 50 feet away from the actual fault line. Okay, so the final appeal assertion questions the Planning Commission's consent calendar process at the February 2025 meeting. That process was conducted in accordance with standard procedures. the commission was informed on record that if there was any factual or objective questions, the item could be moved to the excluded consent calendar. Staff also clearly stated at the time that if the project were appealed, it would return to the commission as a notice public hearing, which is exactly what is happening now. The city attorney and the planning commission staff ensures that all procedural requirements are followed and no irregularities were identified that would affect the validity of the approval. The hearing has been properly noticed and all interested parties have the opportunities to participate. The appeal process has been fully honored and executed in accordance with the law. So as a 100% affordable housing project, this development is subject to the Housing Accountability Act, or HAA. The HAA requires that the cities give the fullest possible weight to the approval and the provision of housing, especially for lower income households. The city of West Hollywood has a RHNA goal of 3,933 new units by 2029, and projects like this are critical to meeting that obligation. So under state law, when a housing project complies with objective general plan and zoning standards, a local agency cannot deny, reduce its density, or impose conditions unless it makes specific written findings supported by substantial evidence that the project would result in a significant, quantifiable, and unavoidable public health or safety impact, and there is no feasible way to mitigate that impact. In this case, the appellant did not assert that the project is ineligible under the HAA, nor did they identify any objective standards that the project fails to meet. As a result, the Planning Commission discretion is limited and that the project must continue to be evaluated through the lens of the HAA protections. Well, in summary, the findings made by the directors were accurate and appropriate. No technical errors were identified, and the condition of approvals remain adequate to address any potential impacts. The 7 amendment items reviewed were found to be minor in scope with no significant impact on the neighborhood, environmental conditions, zoning compliance, or the project's CEQA determination. The project continues to be consistent with the city's general plan goals for housing and land use, and no evidence has been provided to demonstrate that the director's approval was incorrect or that the amendments materially affect the project's compliance. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the appeal and affirmation of the director's decision by adopting resolution PC 25-1602. There are a couple typographical errors that staff would like to update for the record. So on page 7 of the resolution, on criterion 5, it should read, a change to the basis upon which the review authority made the findings for approval of the project. And then on page 23 of the resolution, in section 7, there's a reference to the project number. That project number should read DVP 22-0018. So that concludes my presentation. Staff is available for questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we get too far, I'd like to do a check and see if anyone has any disclosures they'd like to make at this time before we ask any questions. Anyone? No disclosures? Okay. I know the public wants to speak too, so if there are questions of staff, I'd say we keep them brief and just on clarification related items if anyone has those right now. Otherwise, we could move this along. No questions? Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Just a couple quick ones. Regarding the unit size, did the CBC change subsequent to the approval of 2023? Did that unit size change in the California Building Code?
Oh, I see. So there was an interpretation in terms of how living area is determined in the California Building Code. When it was submitted to the Building and Safety Department, we determined that the shelvings, like the countertops, don't count towards that space. So that would cause the applicant to increase that floor area to meet the building code. It's not because of the building code's change. It's just that we had an interpretation, and the applicant was made aware of that interpretation once they submitted to Building and Safety.
I'm confused. The units were too small.
So it's the living area in terms of like counting the living room, any hallway space that leads to
Right.
it. That area was too small. It wasn't the entire unit itself, just that area there. It's small in terms of that. It's not. We're not counting the countertops as part of that number.
So there were countertops there.
Yeah, and then with their updates, we're now no longer counting that countertop. So they increased that floor area to meet that living area requirement.
So the California Building Code didn't change.
Right.
The city's interpretation of the California Building Code changed.
No. So we always had this interpretation. So when they submitted to Building and Safety for a more thorough review, that's when they were able to provide that comment.
So when this was approved in 2023, no one on staff and no one at the applicant understood the California Building Code requirement regarding 190 square feet. It was sent to this commission with the incorrect unit sizes, correct?
So when it goes to Building and Safety, when it first gets submitted to planning, we do have a group meeting called the DRC that has all the different departments looking at it. But the thing is that Building and Safety can't provide like a very thorough analysis because this is just in the phase of entitlement. They do a more thorough analysis when they get submitted to Building and Safety, where they can confirm like all the requirements, all the measurements, how different things play with one another. But that's why.
Okay. Can you explain to me how if the exterior walls are shifted outward, the building is not larger?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about the setbacks. Like, how does it still meet setback if the walls are protruding
No,
out?
I'm referring to the statement that the building is not larger, and yet the walls were extended outward.
Where did you see that?
It's in multiple places in the document that the building is
Yeah.
not larger.
Right. So I think when I'm making reference to that, it's not larger in terms of design massing. So in terms of where the walls are shifting, it's happening where the units were already inset. So there was already. So there's an exterior wall that meets the setback requirements, and then there's the inset wall for the units that are having those changes. These walls are moving outwards, but still meeting the setback requirements. They still have an inset, so it still has the same visual characteristics. But essentially, if you're asking about like total square footage, yes. So the building has increased in square footage.
But the envelope has not.
Correct. So like the envelope, as I mentioned, in terms of the insets,
Okay.
so there.
The changes to the swinging balcony doors, why is that required and how is that an improvement?
I can defer that to the applicant team.
Okay.
They'll explain.
And when establishing the impact on the transformer, was any study given to the vibrational impacts or just the noise impacts?
Yeah, so we had discussions about the vibrations too. It was also determined that it's not a significant impact to the
Okay,
neighborhood.
because the staff report only talks about noise. It doesn't talk about vibration.
Okay.
Okay. How are fiberglass windows more environmentally friendly than aluminum?
I'll let the applicant respond to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for staff? No? Okay. Well, then we will move on to the applicant's presentation, and you will have 5 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence. And then we will move to the applicant's presentation.
And Chair, just to confirm, we're doing 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay.
please, if there's a need for more time, we can discuss that, but first come up and state your name and city of residence.
Excuse me, aren't we having the applicant's presentation first?
We're going to do the applicants and then have the applicant afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We were originally told that we would have 10.
Okay, well, we can discuss that here if we feel...
And I'm sorry, we prepared for 10.
I understand.
We spent a lot of time doing
Give
this.
us one moment. So I feel like I'm seeing consensus. So we'll allow 10 for both. The bylaws say 5, but we will allow you 10. Thank you. You'll have 10 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. Arthur Bernstein, City of West Hollywood. We're here today because we're appealing the city staff's decision on a number of the issues that were requested by Mr. Slansky's company that we believe are major and not minor. Not all of them that were requested, just some of them. So let's start with the transformer issue. The transformer was approved to be inside of the building, thereby shielding the neighborhood from substantial noise and being an absolute eyesore to everybody in the neighborhood. And during the Planning Commission Design Review Subcommittee on March 23rd of 2023, it was approved and agreed to be inside and on the south side underground in the building. Now, and at the last minute, and couching it, as was said earlier, as though it was at the direction of SoCal Edison's insistence, which we now have acknowledged is not true, it's being asked to be placed outside and adjacent and right next to a neighbor's balcony, right next to it, and 1.5 feet from the sidewalk that everybody walks by, including the small children that come walking along from the school where they're picked up and dropped off. We don't believe the applicant's assertion that this mechanical will not create a noise or visual or vibrational impact to the adjacent property. I live there. I know how horribly loud and ugly these things are. I've spoken to the people who live near the Edition Hotel and how that noise and sound and vibration, and especially as it gets older and older, it gets louder and more vibration gets thrown off from it, and how intrusive it is. Let's talk about the trees. The original plan called for the removal of 7 mature, fully grown canopy trees and replaced with 6 small, new fledgling trees in planters which could never grow beyond a planter. The applicant is trying to claim now that by planting a total of trees throughout the entire property, that's the same as having them moved from where they were originally designed. Now, it's great that there are going to be more trees than originally planned, but they're not all where they originally were to be. Hiding this monstrosity of a transformer was part of what was originally going to happen and is no longer going to happen. So it's great that they are going to be additional trees throughout the property, but we need them in certain places as well. The applicant's intentionally muddling those issues, and the ground covering that was in these plans is nothing more than what one finds in a commercial office park. And when we talk about these plans, let's talk about the fact that a 150-page document was delivered a week ago. Now, I don't know whether or not everybody here has read it. I know that it takes a lot of time to go through a 150-page document that has probably 100 pages of plans and trying to decipher what they really truly mean. But in order to fully understand the impact of this, you really have to spend that amount, the time to go through them. So I hope that everybody here has really done that work, because a week is not very much time. The green roof on the top of the building, nearly 1,000 square feet of green space, was sold to the neighborhood as an amenity to the residents, along with adding the aesthetic value, and a beautiful outside garden gathering area, which is now apparently going to be some sort of a barbecue area. What a downgrade. The loss of 1,000 square foot green space in an extremely dense infill building is a very significant and major change by any circumstance. This is in addition to being a major bait and switch tactic on the developer. The drip, drip, drip of these changes, making it seem as though they're small and minor, one by one by one by one, is not okay. You have to look at the totality of it, regardless of what we were just presented with. Each one of these things, quite frankly, doesn't meet the definition of changes, at least in numbers 1, 2, and 3 of what we just saw on the PowerPoint. The change in the balcony size is a really interesting one. The change in the balcony size to lessen the square foot, and quite frankly, I couldn't understand the answer that I just heard about how this doesn't enlarge the size of the building. To me, it was a bit of a word salad. If you're enlarging the building, you're enlarging the building, and I don't see how that's not enlarging the building. The change in the balcony size to lessen the square footage of the balcony so that the living areas of the units are increased gives the appearance that this building is much larger in scale. This has been a repeated discussion for 2 years about size and scale of this building. This is no new discussion. This is no surprise. We have been talking about size and scale. 1,000 residents have signed a petition in this neighborhood discussing size and scale, and I don't quite understand how increasing the size of this building doesn't increase the size of this building. For this reason, the Planning Commission, and not the staff, should have been given the opportunity to review the plans to ensure that the enormous mass of this building was not further impacted by this change. This is something that can't be resolved later on. This is not something that we can fix after this building is built. Lastly, the fitness center. Once again, another promise made and another promise broken. The developers promised a 423 square foot fitness center for the overall well-being of the residents. This would have been of great assistance for residents not to spend money on gym membership dues or transportation and have the amenity of fitness equipment for health and well-being within the building. It was a material selling point to the Planning Commission and was quietly swept away when submitted to staff for approval. The mere fact that the developer requested the fitness center be removed from the plan shows how material the fitness center actually was, regardless of whether or not they have to put one in under the law. When it's convenient, they state the law. When it's loosey-goosey, they go to the staff and say, well, we kind of always do these things, or the city, often does these things. It seems to work whenever it's convenient. What we heard earlier about the transformers, nobody's ever complained in the city. Not really sure about that. I don't know how much of a study that's done, simply because they haven't heard of it. I know that plenty of people have walked by these transformers and commented how unsightly they are. But we'll leave it at that. Martha?
Thank you. Planning Commissioners, as you have seen and heard from Mr. Bernstein's presentation, these are not minor changes. These are major continued changes that will affect the entire neighborhood. These changes should be brought to the entire Planning Commission for review and evaluation. That's all we're asking for. Why would that be objectionable to anyone, particularly to the city staff and to the city attorney? On what grounds would anyone object to the Planning Commission hearing the facts and evaluating them? That is part of your job description, and I'm thankful for it. I find it extremely disturbing, more than anything else, and perhaps you as planning commissioners should too, that on the agenda meeting, There's a recommendation by Roger Rath, who is the city staff, and I'm sure input from city attorney, that says for this particular appeal, and I quote, number one, consider all pertinent testimony. Consider all of it. And number two, right after that, adopt draft resolution number PC 25-1602, denying the appeal. What kind of double message is that? You want to hear us, and yet you want to deny us immediately without taking into any input that we have for you guys to evaluate it. They're just saying, just say no. And also affirming the Director of Community Development approval for minor amendments to this project. Who's making that decision? Who knows what a minor adjustment is? You guys, Arthur mentioned that there's 150 pages on the plan. 150 pages. These are all architectural pages. Who's read them? Roger, have you read them all? Who has actually read them? We just barely got them last week, and we've been cramming. That's why I wanted that extra time, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Obviously, this is not a minor adjustment, but several major changes to the project that you have previously approved. Why are we here then? Does the community have a voice?
Thank you. Are you able to wrap up?
Okay, I'll wrap up. The residents of the city pay for the city staff and attorney. They should be working for us. They are not elected. The city council is elected, and they appointed you as the representatives to hear our voices. That's all we're asking for. Your description is to do that. Our need to have these changes fully reviewed by yourselves, people whose job is to review and advise. Why you be told not to? So you will find that there's.
Okay, thank you. You will have a rebuttal period if there's more you want to cover. Thank you. So now we're going to move to the applicant's rebuttal and presentation.
Was that 10 minutes?
Good evening, Commissioners. Ben Anderson, resident of Los Angeles, principal of Office Untitled and architect on the project. Let me just share my screen here. What just happened? I'm sorry, it closed out on me. I'm just going to have to reopen it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, great. Sorry for the delay. First of all, just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here and present the project. We have brought some additional visuals for maybe a better side-by-side comparison in the hopes that you can find that the staff report is adequate. And also just wanted to thank staff for a very thorough report, so I'm going to try to make this relatively brief. As mentioned, the before and after, we've gone to kind of great lengths to try and capture as much as we can of these changes. On the west side is maybe arguably the least amount in terms of the main aesthetic function of these balconies being in a grid pattern remains, and that the depth of those, usable depth of those balconies also hasn't changed. We have added balconies along this side where within the unit itself we had enough room to accommodate those deeper balconies. The project maintains 45 total units with balconies, 44 without. Those are the usable balconies that are these larger depths. There is an additional amount of what we're calling a Juliet balcony, and those have been changed on the north and south facades. To walk through the ground plane changes, again, yes, we have moved the transformer to the northwest corner. As staff had mentioned, as we move through the later developments of projects and the involvement of structural, MEP, and other consultants that aren't as far along at a planning approval, we did find ourselves at a loss of up to 16 parking spaces, and felt that given the opposite, or the not trying to recoup those, we're currently only at a net loss of 1 parking space from before, that those additional 16 parking spaces would increase demand on the street. We are also showing the addition of 1 unit here. Yes, removing the fitness space was a consideration and a decision to be made, but at the end of the day, preservation of 100% affordable housing units was paramount, and we wanted to find ways of keeping that. From an elevation standpoint, you just saw the rendering of this. Again, largely untouched in terms of the main portion of the facade, the addition of more balconies, but the same balcony condition, same design, same materiality and treatment. The transformer is shown right here. On the south side, this is one of the places where to be clear, the building size in terms of gross square footage did increase, largely because where we could, we moved the depth of that balcony, or the wall of that balcony that's shown here, towards the plane of the image, or further south. So this then becomes more of a Juliet balcony, which we felt, given the side yard setbacks versus the front and rear setbacks, which are bigger, that making that change here would benefit privacy, because you don't have somebody out on the balcony. The door is open, there is breeze, but you're not actually out there. East side was an area where we took advantage of the opportunity to place a balcony almost completely outside of the exterior wall. It's still inset, so the language of where we do treat balconies is preserved, but you are seeing addition of several balconies here that are the deeper or larger and more usable type, again, on the rear yard with a further setback. We felt that was more appropriate. And then on the north side, which abuts our neighbors, these balconies here were effectively shortened, or there's less depth, so that's an area where people can no longer be outside and looking across the way at the neighbors. The units in this far corner do remain as a deeper, more usable one, but we felt the trade-off here with more privacy was a net benefit to the community. And then we have some side-by-side views just showing what we believe to be very minor changes. You're seeing the sort of shrinking of the balcony, if you will, so that becomes a Juliet condition. These ones remain usable. Same thing here. The balconies in the kind of diagrid formation remain in the deeper format, looking out over the street. From above, we do want to make a couple clarifications. The requirement for a green roof or alternate measures, we will meet, and we are currently still including a green roof, as you can see here. That was never intended to be usable. It's in an area where you actually can't see it as a resident. but we still do intend to provide it and meet the code requirement for size. Part of the reconfiguration was simply due to the amount of mechanical equipment that we now have on the roof. If I could just quickly address a couple of things that came up. As staff mentioned, we are not aware of noise complaints about transformers, and we simply comply with Southern California Edison's standards for both noise, vibration, the footing that the transformer sits on. The green space, there was actually no loss of common outdoor space. In fact, at the courtyard level, by moving one of the units, we are increasing the amount of usable outdoor space. Again, a trade-off to be considered with changing the gym use, but we felt more outdoor, common outdoor space was a value. Regarding the balcony sizes, just wanted to be clear that, in fact, the building size has increased. As currently shown per the CBC, we're at 87,192 square feet, whereas before we were 84,415. This is a building that still meets all pertinent codes and zoning regulations. And with that, I will pause.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant at this time, or would we like to hear public comment first? There's some questions over here. I'm just going to go from my far left and work over. So Commissioner Carvalero, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Do your sections, the 24 versus the 25 sections, is the structural that is shown in the 25 diagrams reflect actual structure?
I'm sorry, which section are you referring to, Commissioner?
I'm looking at page A4002, just as an example. And what I notice in your sections is that the sections in the 04-14-24 package show less structure than the 02-13-25. Do those new sections actually reflect the structural that's now proposed, which made you shift some of the underground structural dynamics?
They do, yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Matos.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions for you. In your presentation, you included in your plans depictions of the northwest corner where the SCE utility box would be located. The plans depicted some degree of landscaping that shielded it from the public right-of-way and public viewscape. Is that accurate?
It's accurate in the sense of there's two what we call, let me pull this up real quick again. There's two pieces of electrical equipment that sit nearby the transformer. Those are allowed to be screened by vegetative plants, and the plant species that has been specified will grow in excess of 10 feet, so we feel like it'll be screened. We can't screen the front of the transformer per SCE rules, but it will be screened via a fence or a screen that we are coordinating with Southern California Edison now. So that visually you won't see the transformer itself, you'll see the enclosure that hides it, and that can be up to 6 feet tall.
I see, thank you. My other question is regarding the square footage that you listed off during your presentation, the delta between 87,000 square feet overall, give or take, and 84,000 square feet overall, give or take. That delta, is that from the outward movement of the building exterior to lessen the balconies? Like where does that come into play?
It's a combination of many things. It is reducing the depth of the balconies. It is slightly shifting walls in the courtyard areas. And again, this is all to satisfy the determination from the building department when we were in plan check that the cabinets do not count. So this was our attempt to kind of rectify that.
Got it. So the building envelope, you're saying, stays the same, but the way that you've shifted it with the internal walls and then the external walls via the balcony reduction is how you got the roughly 3,000 delta?
So thank you for the question. I do want to be clear. There were some minor shifting of the exterior walls as well as the interior courtyard walls as well as the balcony. However, the building as designed still meets all of the zoning setbacks, which for the side yards is a 10% modification to the 10 feet, and for the rear yard is the 10% modification to the 15.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Anyone on my right? Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hoopengardner?
Can you bring up your slides again? In particular, I want to discuss rooftop projections. And in my package, it says on page A30, project renderings to be updated, but I don't have any updated renderings. Am I missing something? Is there? Are there updated renderings?
There are. That's what we're showing here.
I see, but they're not in the package.
No.
Okay. All right. So when I look at this image, what I'm not seeing is, so this is the west elevation,
Correct.
and I'm looking at your west elevation drawings on page A30.01, and I see that that actual rooftop projection is both larger and there are additional projections, but they're not in the renderings you just showed us. Which is correct?
So they are in these renderings here. You just simply can't see them from where the vantage point or at any point along the street from the perspective. Obviously, at an elevation standpoint, you're seeing the full depth of the elevation. And as, yeah.
So,
So what you are seeing, Commissioner, is the shade structure, which is visible from street. You're seeing a little bit of the a common amenity area and the area back here, which is the manager's unit. One change to note is the addition of a increased height of parapet. That is still within the overall height limit as measured in the zoning code, and was largely a function of where ultimately the mechanical equipment was placed on the roof. Again, providing the green roof shrunk the area where we could place things mechanically. If we stuck with what we would call kind of a zero parapet condition, you'd still need a guardrail behind it for fall protection, and then behind that you'd have a mechanical screen. So we felt that this was a simpler, more elegant design that kept in the spirit of, again, as a lot of these smaller moments evolve through additional consultant input or building department feedback, this was what we thought was a simpler solution.
so as we go across there, all of that additional height above the windows,
Is not enclosed. It's parapet only for here, and then this is you're seeing the elevator overrun, which is in kind of the middle of the plan.
and then if you keep going, that bit that's sticking out over there, what's that?
That is mechanical screening.
Okay, which was not in the original renderings or elevations?
No.
Okay, can we go to the next page?
So this one, really the main delta here, this is on the south side. The clipping plane of the drawing did not include the rear, but we do show those heights and note those elevations in the north side. We did ultimately enclose the stair that services as a second exit to the rooftop, ultimately having an open stair with concerns about water intrusion into the building. We ultimately decided to enclose that stair. Again, that is still within all zoning setbacks and height allowances.
Okay, so again, I'm looking at the comparison of the actual top floor there and the additional height that is in the new, not the elevator shaft, but the actual building looks considerably taller than in the previous design.
Are you referring to sort of the roof line here?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be the top of the the actual roof, and there have been some minor changes in the floor-to-floors. Those are largely largely a
Please try to
result
be
of-
quiet while we're getting questions out. Thank you.
That's largely a result of the type of input, coordination, decision-making from ownership about mechanical systems that impacts the floor-to-floor heights or the usable floor-to-ceiling heights. Again, this is a 100% affordable project, and selection of MEP to service the most units possible. So we made some minor additions to the overall height, again, still within the zoning clearances and well within the 10% adjustment in terms of the height. So yes, if you're noticing a slight difference in terms of this to this, that's the result of it.
And what is that height? How many feet of additional height?
So it's approximately 2 feet.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next one. So now we are at the west elevation, correct?
East.
East, okay, sorry. So now we're looking at the stairwell?
You have the stairwell on the left.
So
correct.
So can you explain to me, did the CBC change since this original design that stairwells didn't have to be enclosed before and now they do?
The CVC did not change. To answer your question, this was more of a long-term operational concern. Initially, we wanted to preserve as many views and to the greatest extent possible, be a good neighbor in terms of where we are placing mass at the top. Again, the entire top floor of this building has been set back wherever possible. We are providing significant outdoor common amenities, but in this case, this was a long-term durability, operational, and safety decision.
Okay, so moving on to the right, how much taller is that section now?
So we have added, there's baseline, it's a 3.5 foot high parapet. That's the code minimum for fall protection. This is the elevator overrun that you're seeing. This is a parapet as well, just treated differently from a material standpoint based on kind of architectural language in the rear. And then everything above that, like this, is screened in mechanical.
No, I'm referring to what I'll call the tan section. Is how much taller than it was in the original approved plans?
1.4 feet.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about the swinging balcony doors. What is the benefit to removing a sliding door and adding a swinging door, especially in light of now smaller balconies?
That's a good question. Ultimately, certainly in the case of the deeper balconies, as you see here, it's an accessibility concern. The threshold that sliding doors require is a slightly higher lip to cross over. So one of the reasons we made that decision was for greater accessibility into and out of the balcony. We get this question a lot about whether having a swing door or a sliding door in terms of the impact of what you can place on a balcony. Ultimately, you still need to step out onto a balcony, so the chances that you're going to have a chair right where the swing would be we've just never run into that professionally. So we don't really see a net drag in terms of the usability of the balcony with a swing door. So it was kind of a mix of functionality through accessibility lens, longer term maintenance, and just what we have found doing a lot of multifamily and affordable housing projects, which is that largely that space is not necessarily missed. One more point to make is in other places, we have individual air conditioning units within each room. That is a cost decision, but also an efficiency decision. And so that precludes the use of sliders in the Juliet condition.
Okay, thank you. Can you explain why you've removed opening windows and changed them out to fixed windows?
That has to do with the final selection of the HVAC system and how we're servicing the entire building. The building code requires a certain amount of clearance for an operable window to intake or exhaust manifolds. And so in some cases, we had to fix that window based on its proximity to where the mechanical was coming out of the building.
So I'm trying to figure out how that works in our climate change plan. How are the fiberglass windows more environmentally friendly than the aluminum?
Twofold. One is the energy transmission of aluminum, the conductivity. So fiberglass is a more insulative material, and it's actually quite difficult this building is not seeking LEED certification, but for those types of certifications, using aluminum in windows makes it very difficult to achieve. So different metrics.
And
but
I guess my question is also about maintenance, about the longevity of fiberglass versus aluminum.
Mm-hmm. We have not had any maintenance issues with.
Okay, thank you. You made a statement about the green roof, and it sounded like you're not eliminating it, but the plans show that you are eliminating it. So can you clarify that?
So the plans show that we were still going to meet the requirement, whether it was the green roof or the two alternative options. We are still trying to make final decisions, but as you can see here in the rendering, the green roof will provide, it's actually easier to meet the codes once we try for the solar or the solar hot water systems. Those require significant access buffers around them. And given that the roof area, as a result of making the top floor an amenity floor for our residents, that area is just much smaller. And so we didn't feel it was, didn't make as much sense to kind of dedicate that area to either solar PV or hot water, where in fact most of it would get eaten up with just access, so you really end up with nothing.
Because there's a statement in the staff report that it was removed because of maintenance challenges.
So we are keeping it.
So you are keeping it? Because that's not what's is it in the resolution? Is it, because it's in the staff report, it says it's being removed.
Yeah, so that was the scope of work that we received at the time when I did the amendment. This green roof, I mean, the code required that they're going to meet the green building requirements anyways. So if they choose to continue on with the green roof, they're still in compliance with the resolution, which says that they have to just select.
Well, I guess it matters in that it's one of the components of the appeal, so I think we need to be specific about, is it going or isn't it?
Okay. Well, we got the applicant's answer. We can.
Okay. Well, that's it for my questions for the applicant. I have two for legal when the time is right.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Then we will move on to public comment. Secretary Gillig, I guess first question, do we have anyone in Zoom, and then approximately how many people do we have in the room?
We have no callers on Zoom. We have approximately 12 people in chambers.
Okay. Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes, and just keep in mind, because we have a lot of people speaking today, you can always be succinct and say that you agree with the previous comments relating to X if it's repeating information. And so we'll begin. I have a list here. I've actually never seen a speaker list. So the first speaker I see is Stephanie Harker. Will you please approach the podium?
Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. You know, tonight is more about process than anything else. After sometimes painful experience of community members taking a lot of time and energy attending meetings and speaking up to protect their neighborhood, we have arrived at an appeal because the people most impacted by the Weatherly project were bypassed by the staff by putting major changes in said project previously approved by this commission. By calling the changes minor and putting those changes on the consent calendar and sending it on with no significant input from this commission or from the community. If you want to know why community does not show up to speak sometimes, even though the majority do care about things like this are why. The community can talk itself blue in the face and nothing changes. It's sad, isn't it? This is not the first time this type of thing has occurred. There are other structures that have been approved and built and are housing people to this very day that are not what was originally planned. One such building was built specifically for the disabled. It opened for occupancy with 60 ADA violations. Let's all at least know what we are getting by stating it loudly and specifically and not let the public find out about it by reading it on consent. I'm begging everyone to stop saying if someone disagrees with a project that they are against affordable housing because it's not true. You know, truly, I would be upset if I were on this commission that this was not presented to you, at least to have a hearing about it. You may have agreed with it. You may have considered these changes minor as well as the applicant did, but for it to have bypassed you and the community should not continue as a process that we use. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, please try to refrain from clapping. I just want to make sure that everyone feels, regardless of which opinion they have, that they can speak tonight. So it's really about fairness. Our next speaker is Rebecca Damavandi, and then followed by Roger Legrand. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy Believis is first, or you can go. Rebecca, please approach. First time I'm seeing the list here, so Kathy Believis will have you go next. Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca Damavandi. Nice to see all of you again. I think the main thing I kind of wanted to mention is that while staff considers things minor, we consider things major. And the fact that things were presented in a way that the building size didn't change, we've now seen the building size has changed. The height didn't change, the height has changed. The balconies, you know, altogether, there weren't really any added in a net sum. They were added, and there is more bulk on the building. The transformer, it's standard. It's not standard to have a huge 6-foot-tall transformer in front of a residential building on a small infill street in a neighborhood. It doesn't exist in our neighborhood. The first one that was done was from the Edition Hotel. It's on the back side of the Edition Hotel that happens to be Harriet Street. But usually you see this along busy streets like Santa Monica, maybe even Doheny. All the monster buildings on Doheny, their transformers are inside the garage. WHCHC had promised us mechanical would be on the roof or in the garage. I understand sometimes things happen, but to put it 1.5 feet in front of the right-of-way of public walking on a sidewalk is a major change. And it's ridiculous. Mechanical is supposed to be hidden and covered. That's what our code says, so it does not become a visual nuisance to the public. This is a visual nuisance. So they've done some great changes, but some aren't so great. It should come back to you. You guys can work with them. Nobody's saying stop the building. The building is going to happen. It's 89 units. We already know it's a monster. We already know it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. It is what it is. But there are things that can be done in a better way that doesn't just get pushed through. As a public, we are sick of constantly changes happening to buildings that we see a diagram that gets approved by planning, and then a year later, it's in WehoVille, and it looks like something none of us ever expected. That's not fair. And to make a couple other quick points, the whole reason the rooftop I don't know, garden, vegetable area, whatever they were saying. They had said the residents, it was something for the residents to enjoy they had done in other buildings, and they wanted to provide this service to them. They wanted to provide this gym to them, that this is going to be the beacon of all affordable housing. Little by little, they keep taking all these amenities away, and it becomes a different project. There was also, in meetings that we had with the Historic Commission, they wanted some space away from the historic church so that people weren't gathering over the roof, accidentally throwing something over the roof and partying. The garden was going to be there in greenery to protect, set it back. I think it was Ruggiero who asked for some undulating motion of the... I'm just taking Bobby's time because she left sick, so I'm just going to take another 20 seconds because she just had to leave.
I don't know if we can procedurally do
okay?
that. No, we can't swap time between people. I'm sorry.
You've got to be kidding me. All right.
Thank you. So Kathy Blavis, is Kathy Blavis here? Thank you. Followed by Roger Lagrange.
Good evening. Kathy Blavis, City of West Hollywood. I support this appeal, and I support affordable housing. Last time I spoke in this chamber regarding this project, I emphasized the importance of developers, specifically WHCHC, working with community, engaging with neighbors who will live alongside the future residents of this project. I addressed concerns about the project's massing, height, and the lack of meaningful collaboration with the neighborhood to create an affordable housing complex that fits within its surroundings. Let me be clear, neither I nor the many community members who spoke that night opposed affordable housing. We did not oppose this project's purpose or the need for more affordable housing in this city. What people are fighting for is inclusion in the decision-making process. This is not an us versus them issue. And yet there are people in this room, on this dais, who have mischaracterized our concerns, implying that we are against affordable housing. That is simply not true. What I oppose is the lack of communication and lack of respect for those who hold differing perspectives, especially when it comes to defining what constitutes a minor versus major change. An example of a major change is the relocation of the transformer to the northwest corner of the site. While I understand the need for structural coordination and compliance with Southern California Edison's requirements, this placement, just 1.5 feet from the sidewalk, raises the question about its impact on the streetscape, pedestrian experience, and neighborhood aesthetics. We are told that the transformer's enclosure will be sound dampening and visually unobtrusive, but there has been little engagement with the community regarding this decision. Just because something aligns with industry standards does not mean it's the best solution. And in addition, when parking is not a requirement for 100% affordable housing, the applicant opted to retain as much parking as possible. Transparency and collaboration could have led to an alternative placement or mitigations that better balance the utility needs and loss of parking with community concerns. Again, this is about process. Residents should not be informed after the fact. True engagement means including the community before these decisions are finalized, and I urge this commission to support this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Roger Lagrange, followed by Bobby Edrick.
Good evening. My name is Roger Lagrange. I live on Hilldale Avenue in West Hollywood. First of all, I'd like to thank you for providing this opportunity for the community to express their concerns about the changes to this project. I'm here tonight to support the residents who are directly impacted by the project and these proposed changes. I'm also here to express my concern that the decision you make on this issue could have potential negative impacts on myself, my husband, and other residents of West Hollywood. Some of you may remember me speaking in support of the apartment complex that Jeff Klein is building on Hilldale Avenue. I spoke at the last meeting where you approved the final plans. However, the approval was with the caveat that any changes to the plan would need to come before your committee for approval. I appreciate that because I fully supported the building as proposed, not something that may look significantly different. One of the major changes proposed by the Weatherly project is to alter their plan by moving the transformer from the garage to a spot in front of the building. Hence, doing so would impact the landscaping and aesthetics. Here's where I tie these two projects together. As I recall, one item that stands out about Mr. Klein's plans is a transformer that is to be moved underground. While I trust Jeff Klein, what if his investors or other people who influence his decisions convince him to save money by moving the transformer in front of his apartment building? They can cite the Weatherly project as an example where such an amendment was approved. This could also set a precedent for all future projects involving such plans. Tonight, I've heard a lot of major changes, not minor changes to this proposal. I strongly encourage you not to allow these significant changes to the Weatherly project. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bobby Edrick, followed by Daisy Torm. Okay, thank you. So Daisy Torm, followed by Susan Rosenbluth.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daisy Torme, and I live in the Norma Triangle, so this does affect me personally, my everyday life. I'd like to start with a quote from one of the members of the West Hollywood Historic Commission who said, referring to this very project, about which they had no control, but they did have input. And this is a direct quote: "Just because you can doesn't mean you should." I just want to talk a little bit about balance. I agree with my neighbors. We are for affordable housing, but we are also for balance here. The insulting nature of this project to the surrounding neighborhood that you want us to welcome is astonishing. From cramming in a building with, you actually said it yourself, 72 more units than what that land was originally zoned for, to telling us that parking isn't going to be a big deal because people just don't drive anymore and have cars. I mean, this is 89 units, 89 family units. Come on, guys. Being told this is an insult to our intelligence, and it's an insult to our neighborhood. You know, we've got that Melrose Triangle, disgusting piece of land over there that's begging for development. Anyway, the photos that we've been shown with the transformer, that photograph that we were shown, that transformer looked like it was shorter than me. It wasn't 6 feet tall. There's just no way. And the renderings that we've been shown make Weatherly look like the Sepulveda Pass or the 405. I mean, it's a very narrow little street. And every rendering you guys have seen doesn't really show you what it's like to be on that street. It's incredibly narrow. Try driving up or down it with a car coming the other way. You have to sort of scoot over to the side. It's really small. Anyway, guys, like I said, I agree with my Norma Triangle neighbors. This stuff shouldn't be snuck in and then we're told afterwards. Please be a part of it and take what we've said, look at it. Like we said, we just want to be in the conversation. We want you guys to be a part of the conversation. And this is really going to impact a beautiful, historic neighborhood. Please bear that in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Susan Rosenbluth, followed by Donna Stellini.
Thank you very much. We've heard already so much tonight. I agree with a great deal of it and will not bore you with repetition. I will join my neighbors in objecting to the fact that our city staff continually encourages you not to take this project as your own responsibility for review. Rather, to trust them with the summaries that they provide for you. Obviously, what we've already seen tonight is that the staff report was in error in several important ways. The building was, in fact, expanded, though the city's report tells you otherwise. And on and on. I live across the street from this building. So every day, instead of looking at the charming cottages that were next door to the historic church, I will be looking at this huge building which towers over everything else and is out of sync with the feeling of the neighborhood. Okay, it's already been approved. It happens that I've spent 30 years of my life working with homeless veterans. I object to the fact that on maybe 3 years' worth of meetings that I've attended, I'm one of the neighbors being characterized as NIMBY. I don't believe in affordable housing. Obviously, I care deeply about it, and I want it in my neighborhood. But I want the Planning Commission to look at all of the plans made for anything that is built in West Hollywood, certainly across the street from me on this tiny little street where many of us live in multi-dwellings, myself included. We're not opposed to multi-dwellings. We believe in community, and we want you to protect our community. We want you to be part of our community. We want to have a voice. We do not trust the city staff to do the job that has been entrusted to you. We, in fact, I have personally been at multiple meetings in the last few years where you are encouraged not to take a look, just pass it through. I ask you not to. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Donna Stellini, followed by Mark Farhad Yusupov.
Good evening. My name's Donna Stellini, and I am a neighbor. I live right across the street from the project. Everybody has said what we mostly feel about it. The street is just a small street. Weatherly is only 1 block. I don't know if you know the area, if you've gone by it, but if you're on Doheny, all those streets, one by one, it's a quaint little covey place. And I was here the last time, and my main concern was about parking. And you had assured us that the commission had looked at the parking and it was sufficient, and that was the way it was going to be. And since then, more buildings have been improved on the street, and the parking is getting heavier and heavier. The schooling, which you guys know, is just on the side street, so Weatherly's just 1 short block. You have the traffic that's coming from Doheny to San Vicente that's jammed. If you live in the neighborhood, it's jammed from 5:15 to 7, and now you're going to bring in a big, huge building that has twice the units that we have in our building across the street, which is 42. And we have a hard enough time with the parking and being nice neighborlies. We try to, move our cars right and give the kids, the mothers in the street picking up the kids at school. So I hope that, that the commission would maybe send somebody over and look at really what the traffic is, because it's not, we're not telling you a story. I mean, I took pictures today, and at 8:50, our street was full, a couple of places left, and then on Phyllis, all the way down Phyllis was full. So you pull out of Weatherly now, and you got to turn in to go to Doheny, where you're taking, you know, you have to be cautious, and you have to ask them to make their mirrors go in so we don't bang them. So I just would like you guys to make sure that and I appreciate all your hard work to maybe see what it is, how serious the parking is over there, because they're not allowing enough parking spaces in the building for the tenants to come in. So we'll have them on the street, and I don't know where they're going to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Mark Farhad Yusupov.
Good evening. My name is Mark Yusupov, West Hollywood. So I believe this requested amendment may reflect underlying concern about this project's viability. There are several aspects of the project that raise concern that deserves careful consideration. One, the construction cost has reportedly reached over $600,000 per unit, which exceeds the price of larger market rate units in our area. This raises important questions about cost efficiency. This project appears to be consuming disproportionate share of limited public funding resources that could potentially be used for additional affordable housing developments elsewhere in our community. By advancing this particular project, despite significant community concerns, we also risk eroding public trust and support for future affordable housing initiatives. While I understand that the developer is utilizing state laws that can override local zoning regulations, I'd like to note that West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation maintains close working relationship with the city government and city council. Given these relationships, WHCHC should demonstrate greater responsiveness to community concerns rather than proceeding with the current plan regardless of opposition. I respectfully ask the Commission to carefully weigh in these considerations before deciding on the requested amendment. This could be good and last opportunity to give a thorough review of the project that is not financially working out due to its design. Perhaps maybe this explains the continuous delays with the start of the project. Last I heard, they were planning to begin the project last year, and it seems like they're running into these problems with the cost, trying to make it work by moving transformers and such. But maybe the overall project needs to be reviewed and see if it's financially viable. It may require so many millions now, but if there are mistakes made in design, that figure can only increase. And that will be just a shame to spend so much money on so little. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is our last public speaker.
And Chair, we have a couple citizens' position slips that were submitted. Wendy Goldman submitted one opposing staff's recommendation. And Ben Bruskin submitted a slip supporting staff's recommendation. And that's all staff has.
Thank you. Okay. Then moving along, we now have time reserved for rebuttal. Would the appellant like to make a 2-minute rebuttal? If so, you can approach the podium and speak.
You guys are really tough with the time. I got to speak fast. Bring the New Yorker out of me. We ask you to review the original plans and the proposed changes. If you notice, some interesting things happen. On page L00 and L1, 10, and 11, you will see that...
Would you mind speaking into the microphone? I'm seeing some people in the back are having trouble hearing. We can give you another minute, or not a minute, but a little bit more time.
I'll take that. Can you hear me now? Hello? Okay.
That's much better.
Thank you. We ask you to review the original plans and the proposed changes. Obviously, there seems to be miscommunications and misprints and heights that are not the right heights. And I believe that this really calls for the Planning Commission to do their job. There's so many interesting things on those plans. In little tiny print, they'll tell you that they're going to replace those trees, but they're going to be tiny, tiny 2-footers, and they're going to have little twigs. That's the new trees that they will be replacing. So many other things were sold to the City Council, and yet it all started with a former Planning Commissioner, Agahi, acquiring the site through questionable means and flipping it immediately to WHCHC, who had a month earlier established an LLC for the Weatherly project. Agahi made over $1.5 million for that month, and WHCC acquired the site for way less than market value. I do not want the Weatherly project to become another 916 Westbourne Avenue. Take a look at the project that you guys approved, and take a look at what the actual result was. This was the 916 Westbourne Avenue project, and I beg you not to let that happen to our neighborhood, and you guys can stop it.
I got 40 seconds, so I'm going to go for it. City staff is completely in disconnect with you guys. You owe it to us as your citizens and people who live in the neighborhood to get your heads up, look at what we're speaking to, Mr. Solomon, and hear what we have to say, that this affects our neighborhood. Number one thing on the list that RAF presented is a major or a minor change affect the neighborhood. This affects our neighborhood. That's my 9 seconds. Thanks. I appreciate all of you. You do an amazing job. I am grateful. Some of you couldn't seem like you really did care. I'm beeping off, but you gotta get with us. We live in this neighborhood. This affects us. Come step on our street for 5 minutes and look how this will impact our life. I know, Michael, I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to say I apologize for not
sorry.
looking. I was
Yeah,
I was
we
looking
can
at the
address-
page number that was referenced.
But we could, I suggest, okay, listen, I want to make sure there's not too much crosstalk, so just case in point here, I know that we all want to respond to public up here or back there, but it opens up a lot of conversation. Now, when we get to deliberation, please do, if you want to clarify anything, I actually would do as well. So anyway, let's keep this moving. So the applicant now has the opportunity for a 2-minute rebuttal if you would like to.
Hi, everyone. First of all, my name is Jesse Slansky. I'm with West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation. I want to thank you all very much. There were two things, I'm like interrupting our architect, that two things that were a little confusing. There is still a community garden. There's still community space on the roof. The staff report and what Ben was talking about earlier is the vegetative roof that's part of the Green Building Code. So all of the residential amenities on the roof are still there. Number two, I would like to invite all of our neighbors to the corner of Cynthia and Weatherly, where there are 2 electrical transformers on the sidewalk right now that have been there for many, many years, and I'm not aware of any issues in the neighborhood with these 2 electrical transformers that are on the sidewalk at Cynthia and Weatherly in a residential neighborhood in front of a single-family home. Thank you.
You've actually covered most of them. I just wanted to add one more thing as it relates to the transformer. In the drawings, it does show 1'6" or 18 inches from the public right-of-way. That's the transformer pad. The transformer itself is another 5 feet from that. So it's not something that anybody could reach out and touch or brush up against. And again, in addition to its distance from the sidewalk of roughly 6.5 feet, it will be screened in, so both visually and physically separate from anybody who's passing by. Thank you very much. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, no questions. If there are no questions, then I will close the public comment portion of this hearing and bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and deliberation. We will reserve the right to ask questions of city staff or applicant during a deliberation if necessary. Oh, okay. Well, there are questions. So Commissioner Hoopengartner, please. Your questions are for the applicant?
No, for staff.
Staff, okay.
I have two questions for legal. Number one, on page 3 of the staff report, it states that the city must meet a regional housing needs assessment goal of 3,933 units. Is that a fact? How can we meet them without somehow compelling developers to build? It's a goal, but is it a fact that the city must meet RENA goal of 3933?
Commissioner, it's a good point. The city can't compel development, as you mentioned. The state does hand down, of course, RENA numbers that are expected to be met within the cycle, and that factors into a whole host of things between the city and the state as it looks at the city's compliance and its representations made in the housing element.
And the fact of the matter is, in the last cycle, the city did meet the goal. I think there was one other jurisdiction in the state of California that met their goals. So let's be clear, this is not a requirement. I just wanted that clarified. Thank you. Now, I'd like to talk about the decision before us. We have an appeal.
I can't get my mic to work. Are you moving into deliberation?
No.
Oh.
It's a question about
Okay.
what is the decision that we're being asked to make. And there is an appeal that is stating that staff's decision that these were minor changes were in fact major. And staff's rebuttal includes statements about why they believe things were minor versus major. Are we being asked to make a ruling on majorness versus minorness? Are we being asked to make a ruling on the actual merits of each component of the appeal? I'd like us to make that distinction and have that clarified by legal.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoopengartner. It's a really good question. As the Commission's aware, what's before you tonight in terms of the appeal, the Commission's limited to considering the points and the subject matter of the appeal. So to your point, the agenda materials include every assertion made by appellants. That includes sort of enumerated examples of concerns with specific changes and sort of a preamble of sorts to suggest appellants' perspective that taken together, those constitute a major amendment and not a minor amendment. So I would say before the Commission tonight is the consideration of whether the Commission agrees or disagrees that the changes constitute a major amendment. Staff's representation and recommendation within the materials is, and for the analysis included therein, is that it constitutes a minor amendment. But that's the question before the Commission this evening. The project has been approved by the Planning Commission and then subsequently on appeal by the City Council. And staff has articulated in the materials that the changes that are are being contested between appellant as part of this appeal do not impact the project's compliance with the Housing Accountability Act, and the project approval itself is not a component of the appeal. The question is whether or not the changes as part of this amendment that were approved by the CDD director on February 13th were correctly approved as a minor amendment, or whether they should have been approved as a major amendment in a public hearing brought before the Planning Commission. As part of this appeal, the Planning Commission is considering those same changes to the development plan as part of a noticed public hearing.
So I just really want us to be clear about this. So if we were to vote to say, yes, in fact, these were major changes, then it would be required to come back to us again for representation of deciding about these major changes? Because if we were to vote that these were major changes, would that in fact be denying staff's approval of the minor changes?
It's a good question. It would not need to come back because at issue, I think you framed it correctly, Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner, at issue at the appeal is whether or not the development permit changes constitute a major or a minor amendment. The remedy, so to speak, for a major amendment is that it be noticed in front of the Planning Commission for consideration as a public hearing, which is what's occurring this evening as part of the appeal. So the question is whether or not it's a major or minor amendment. Staff has set forth its recommendation for why it believes it's a minor amendment, but staff has also made clear in the materials that the assertions raised with respect to the appeal don't impact the underlying project approval, and there's no basis to impact sort of the approval that occurred by the Planning Commission and City Council with respect to the underlying project and its consistency and provisions under the Housing Accountability Act.
Okay, so one last piece of this. There are 7 or 9 components to this appeal. If we were to feel a vote for saying that one of those or 2 of those or 3 of those elements were major and the rest were minor, how would that work in terms of voting?
I think I would defer to, I think in part I would wait until the commission was in deliberation to sort of assess how it would work. So I would...
I guess given that the question is it minor or is it major, is the question, does it have to be 100% all minor or 100% all major? This is all new. I think we've never done anything like this before, so I'm really trying to understand.
So if I can, Doug Vu, department staff. So if the commission agrees collectively that one or more of these assertions constitutes a major amendment, then the commission would have to make the findings that would be necessary. So there are 5 criteria that determine whether or not a proposed change to a project is major or minor. So let's say, for instance, if you determine that one of these assertions is major, you would need to make the finding that that change results in a significant impact to the environment, whether it results in a significant impact to the neighborhood, whether that assertion or that change results in a significant impact to the project's design, whether it changes the basis upon which the environmental determination was made, or whether or not that change results in a change to the basis upon which the City Council made the findings for the approval of the project. That's what the commission you would have to do.
On 100% of the elements? On each of the elements individually?
No, it's one of those, not all 5.
Right. Okay, where I understand.
And Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner, I think just by way of reference, I think you're right. It may be the first time at least this body has considered an appeal that was on this specific point, the code requirement of whether or not the amendments to the development plan were major or minor. So I think they're good questions for the body. And I think, again, I would wait for the commission to deliberate on where it wanted to go, but I would note it's not dissimilar to other sort of findings that the commission has to make and ensuring there's evidence in the record to support the commission's ultimate determination.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we were very clear as to what we're voting on. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I do have a quick question just to follow up on Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner's questions, which were great questions. So just so I'm clear, if there is a determination made tonight that the commission does not agree with the director's designation of this as a minor change, what happens? I'm more asking this for posterity, but I feel like I'm a little bit in the matrix right now. Can you tell me like what happens if we, because it is semantics and it is, there are very strict guardrails here, so I want to be clear on what those are.
Correct. Commissioner Jones, it's a good point. And just to reiterate, and these are within staff's materials, so in addition to the subject of the appeal and the findings the commission is being asked to make, which is whether or not the changes and the community development director's February 13th approval of those changes constituted a minor amendment or a major amendment with the findings Mr. Vu just read in from the record. That's sort of the appealable question of fact for the commission. So what the materials also do is articulate that those changes, irrespective of that decision before the commission, don't augment the underlying approval of the project because those changes, firstly, the project's already been approved, and second, those changes don't impact any of the objective standards that under the Housing Accountability Act would be grounds to deny the project or condition the project to reduce density.
So the project would still go forward?
Correct.
And what would the appellant, if there is another next step be? Would it be an appeal to council?
Correct. So under the municipal code, so amendments to an approved project, it says that whether or not it's a minor or major amendment, and this is under 1962-070, it goes back to the review authority that considered it. So here we're talking about amendments to the development plan of the project. So the commission is hearing now this question on appeal, whether it's a major or minor, and that decision of the Planning Commission could then be appealed further up to City Council.
By either party, depending on the decision. Okay.
And pending council's decision, if council agreed, again, I'm walking down this road, this is more for a matter of public record because I want to make sure we're all clear on what we're doing up here tonight. So if council agreed that with Planning Commission, should we vote to say that it was major and not minor, we're able to make the findings to do that, then what would happen? I guess I'm trying to understand or to state for the public what the path of the project would be, because it is subject to the Housing Accountability Act and it has been approved.
Yes, the commission could find that if they disagreed with the analysis of staff's recommendation that this constituted a major amendment, then they would make findings articulating why it constituted a major amendment. But the sort of remedy or consequence of that is a public hearing before the Planning Commission, which is being held right now.
Right, that's my question
Yeah.
too. So in essence, the appeal is to, so this is the public hearing for
Correct.
the amendments,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? No? Okay. So I will formally close the public comment portion of this hearing, bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and deliberation, and we will reserve the right to ask questions of city staff or the applicant if necessary during deliberation, or reopen the public comment portion of the hearing. I guess I'd like to hear from my colleagues first, but I would say, if just so that we have clarity here, it would, in my opinion, be helpful if everyone kind of thought about the main or first question, which is whether this is a minor or major amendment, and then we can get maybe deeper into something if we need to. I don't know if anyone wants to go first. Looks like Commissioner Carvalero would like to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for everybody who came out and spoke at the podium today. It really impacted me when I came to this meeting, or when I reviewed the plans. I understand and can see why staff approved this as a minor change, just because when you look at the project in its totality, and you look at how the structural evolved, I understand that staff looked at it from the fact that all that change was superficial on the exterior, and the height of the building still meets all the parameters of zoning. So when I look at the building in its mass and the things that have changed, I can see how staff said it's minor. But hearing all the comments tonight from the community, I understand for the community, you know, these external, what seems superficial changes really do impact our everyday experience on the sidewalk and the neighbors. So it's a bit of a conundrum, because I totally understand, and again, those public comments really impacted me. And then I was thinking about process, you know, because when these projects come to Planning Commission, planning has already or is close to approving the project so it can go into the building department. And once you enter the building department and you go through all the divisions, projects do evolve. So if we want to have complete transparency, it feels to me like we need to have another public hearing before that permit is issued, because the project has evolved like this project has evolved. You know, divisions impact how a project moves through the building department. And it seems like what we're asking is for those projects to come to Planning Commission completely evolved in their final iteration, after it's gone through all the division, after it's gone through all the MEP, all the, you know, structural evolutions. And you know, that just kind of weighs down the process in a world where we're trying to streamline everything. But again, I understand where the community is coming from and what impacts them. And I'm really just curious to hear what my fellow commissioners think about that and how we go about this vote, and also having, you know, the cloud of Housing Accountability Act over our heads right now.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gregoire, would you like to speak?
Sure. You know, I appreciate Commissioner Cavallero's comments. One thing I want to say is I heard a lot of the speakers say this is not minor to us, right? I really appreciate that. When we originally approved this project, I think we all recognized that there was going to be significant impacts on the neighborhood, some of the neighbors, but we did make the determination that it did comply with all the applicable codes in the Housing Accountability Act. We did find it was an appropriate project and we approved it. And again, I recognize that the neighborhood thought, and I believe there were significant impacts of the approved project. But what's before us today is to determine whether these changes that have been made are significant. And I don't believe these changes are significant. I do believe the project has significant impacts overall, but these specific changes I don't believe are significant enough to constitute a major change. I do believe these changes constitute a minor change. Therefore, under that basis, I think we have to deny the appeal in this matter. The other thing I wanted to say is, like, I've heard at a couple of planning commissions over the last few months, frustration that a lot of projects around the city do undergo pretty significant changes during the building and safety process. I'm not familiar with those other projects. I don't know if I would consider those major or minor amendments. But those projects aren't before us tonight. This project is before us tonight. And again, these particular changes, I don't think that they're significant enough to sustain the appeal. But But again, I'm with you, neighborhood. I know this project is significant to you, and but I just don't see a basis to sustain the appeal. Therefore, I will be voting to affirm staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Is anyone else? Okay. Commissioner Jones?
Sure, I can go. This might be a little bit rambling, so just bear with me here. I also do want to state, just for the record, I actually was not at the Planning Commission meeting where this was decided. I was the chair of the Design Review Subcommittee meeting on March 3rd, 2023, when this was before Design Review. So I'm not giving myself an out, but I do want to provide some background just insofar as like my understanding and how deeply I had to delve kind of in these materials to make sure that I was clear on all of the changes that had happened, because there are, I mean, I have my notes, and if I was looking down, it's because I write everything down that everyone says. Sometimes what's the color of shirt you're wearing, so I remember. I know that at the March 23rd meeting, we had people, Christian Kaplan, Bobby Edrick, Rebecca Demovandi, Mark Reeder, Arthur Bernstein, Joseph Dickstein, Joe Safranek, Lynn was there as a member of the public, George Murphy, people called in. So I have been paying attention. I think, you know, what I heard from this, and I may sound a little bit like a therapist right now, I'm not by vocation or otherwise, but what I hear and what I sense more than anything is that people feel like they haven't been heard and that they haven't been listened to and that they've been excluded from the process that is going to impact them in some way or another, and that whether or not you supported this project originally, that it kind of adds insult to injury, right? That you felt as though these changes that were put on consent as a courtesy for Planning Commission in February, there wasn't a formal hearing, which is now kind of what we're here to do tonight. To Commissioner Carballero's point, this is really hard because how I feel and the determination and the presentation that staff made make it difficult for me to feel like I'm going to be able to make a vote on this that's going to make people happy. And that pains me. One, because I'm a people pleaser, but also because I, as a member of this community, as are we all on this dais, I want to make decisions that people feel good about and feel good about living here. So I also heard, insofar as all of the changes, that the word that I heard the most, I did a little ticker, I think it was said like 25 times or something, was transformer. It sounds like the transformer is what people have the biggest problem with, right? So it seems like the impact of that, what you think it's going to look like, the size of it, the proximity to the building or to the public right-of-ways, that it sounds to me like that's what physically, in terms of the changes themselves, that's what people had took the most issue with. And again, I'm just kind of like rehashing here what I heard up here on the dais and all of the comments that I heard was mostly about the process, and it was about the transformer, right? So I wish I had a solution that was going to make everybody feel really good about this. I want to hear what the rest of my fellow commissioners have to say, and if there's, I don't even know if there's a creative way that even the guardrails in which we have to make this determination tonight are so narrow that I'm speaking out loud here. I told you it was going to be a little bit rambling because this is kind of a stream of consciousness monologue that I'm making up here, but I do want to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say about this, because it's clear that from the outset that there have been a lot of feelings about this. There's also been an incredible amount of community involvement, which we deeply appreciate. We don't always see this much community involvement for projects. There are nights that we are here that no one comes. So we value your time, and we value your opinion, and we value how you feel and how this may impact you, and whether perceived or otherwise, like, we are here to listen to you. So I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear what the rest of the commission has to say. I may have some more comments, but I just as someone who's kind of seen this from at least from its first iteration at design review, I did want to just state all of those and kind of what I heard up here for the record. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Matos?
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank the community for coming out and participating in the public process. I could speak for all of us, but I'll speak for myself. I read all of your public comments. I listen to all of them with the utmost attention and care. And I take what I do up here very seriously, not only because it is an oath that I took to the city, but also because I care deeply about the community that I live, work, and play in. So I just want to reassure everybody that your voices have been heard this evening, and I want to thank you for coming out. You know, this is a very interesting thing before us. We haven't seen anything like this before. When we started the meeting, I pulled up the West Hollywood Municipal Code, section 1962070. The section is entitled Amendments to an Approved Project. It outlines, to what staff was saying earlier, 5 specific determinations, 5 specific instances that need to be true in order for it to be considered a major change. And every point that has been made this evening and in the staff report, I have looked to each of these 5. I just want to go over my decision-making process so that you all understand what I'm dealing with here too. The 5 are significant impacts to the surrounding neighborhood, significant environmental impacts, a change to the approved use, or a significant change to the project design, a change to the basis on which the environmental determination for the project was made. And then finally, number 5, a change to the basis upon which the review authority made the findings for approval of the project. So these are the things that I've been looking at because that's my job, is to go off of the municipal code. I definitely feel for the community that feels that these are major changes. You know, I think that a lot of concerns with the process have been voiced, and I definitely understand those concerns. I definitely agree with Commissioner Ruggiero that we're in a very interesting spot. But when I look at each of the items that have been brought forward tonight, both here in the chamber and in the staff report as outlined, the 9 specific parts of this appeal, I have yet to find one that meets one of this 5 criteria outlined in the municipal code. I understand that the transformer is a change that, you know, it's a big change, right? But for it to be a significant change, personally, because we're being asked to make a judgment call up here, right? And we can only go with the facts before us. If there was a significant change in my mind, it would be if they still decided to put the transformer underground and then the project was shorted 16 parking spots from what was originally approved. That would be a major change. That's not what we see here. When we look at some of the building envelope concerns, I know that, you know, there's the differential between 84,000 square feet and 87,000 square feet. The envelope stayed the same per what staff was saying, per what we're looking at, right? Some of the balcony sizes changed. There was a foot per the applicant's presentation or so given in building height, but it all stayed within the overall envelope and within the overall requirements that we need to look at Housing Accountability Act projects on. That doesn't, I'm not trying to discount what everyone's feeling here. I'm just trying to give you my thought process as to what I'm looking at and kind of how I have to be objective by looking at what's in our code and what's before us and then make a judgment call in line with those laws that are before us. So I'm a little bit torn here because I definitely understand the community's perspective that, you know, this process has not been great and that there has been changes to the project since it was approved, and that's not ideal. I understand that sentiment wholeheartedly. But when we're looking at what we're being asked to assess this on based on what's in the municipal code, because, you know, the law is the law, you have to abide by it whether you agree with it or not. If you don't agree with it, run for office and change it. This is what I'm looking at. So I just want to go into that. I've been going each and every item, all 5, all the way down, and I don't know if I am able to make a determination that these changes that are outlined equate to a significant project design change or significant environmental impact or a significant impact to the surrounding neighborhood. Because the other thing is, to the point that was made earlier, if we were to make a finding that this was a major change, not a minor change, we then have to support that finding with a finding of fact, meaning we have to take from the code, this is what we believe didn't get met. You know, it was this specific item within the appeal was a significant change, major change because of this component of the project change. So anyways, I'll just leave it there. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it, and that's where I'm at. But I want to thank the community for coming out. I promise you, your participation does matter, and it does have an input, and it has really helped me do my job tonight, so thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Solomon?
Thank you to the members of the public who have come out tonight. I apologize for the crosstalk earlier. I'm looking down at the notes that I've taken, and if someone is up here, a member of the public, referencing a direct page number, I want to go to that page and see if I've taken notes on that page or exactly what reference is being made by the public. I promise you, all of us are up here giving you our full attention. My own personal experience, I live on Kings Road now, but before that, I lived right here. I lived at 9005 Cynthia, and I lived in the unit on the western side. My balcony looked out on the first floor, looked out on this parking lot. It literally was my backyard. And the Norma Triangle, in my opinion, is the best neighborhood in West Hollywood. It's my favorite neighborhood, and for that reason, I can understand why all of you are so proud of it and want to defend it. I do think it's my favorite spot in the city. The comments that I heard over and over tonight, and also that I brought up as I was reviewing, of the changes that have been proposed to the project, or being asked to consider whether or not they're minor or major. The one that rises to the top, and is the first one listed to me, is the transformer relocation. The other comments that I heard often tonight were about process. Like Commissioner Matos said, we're tasked with looking at the municipal code, 19.62.070, and there's 5 factors that we go through to determine whether or not this project change is minor or major. In looking at the transformer relocation, the one that would give the most rise would be a significant impact to the neighborhood. But as I've had this agenda in front of me for the past week, as I've observed my built environment, as I walk around, I noticed that there are many, many more transformers on the street level than I ever thought or noticed before. In fact, there's some even on that very same street. The second criticism that has been mentioned the most has been process, and I do want to defend the way that staff presented this. Staff makes determinations all the time on projects that change from the entitlement phase to the actual building phase, that staff makes a decision that that is a minor adjustment. I've never seen a minor adjustment get noticed on the Planning Commission consent calendar so as to inform the community and give rise to it. I mean, it's a level of transparency that I haven't seen before, and we're all here because staff did take that step to inform. So I don't agree with the criticism leveled at staff saying that this has been done in any sort of untoward way. I appreciate that it's been done in the utmost transparency for those around. But as I go through these 5 different factors laid out in the code about whether or not I make a determination on whether or not this is a major or a minor change, I agree with the staff recommendation that these are minor changes. And for that reason, when it comes time to vote, I will support the staff recommendation to deny the appeal.
Commissioner Hoopengartner?
First of all, I think I would like to thank staff for actually bringing this forward. As I think Commissioner Caballero and I brought up more than once, we're very concerned about major changes to projects that are unrecognizable to the public from what was approved at this body, by this body, and what actually shows up on the street. So I think I feel like we've been heard in that respect, and I thank staff for bringing this forward and putting it on consent and bringing it to the public's attention, because actually one of the things that kind of miffed me a little bit about the previous staff report is like, well, the public has a right to appeal, except for nobody would have ever known that this decision had been taken by staff, so there was no way for anyone to appeal it if staff hadn't noticed it on the consent calendar. So I think that's really important, and I don't want this process to discourage staff from continuing to do that, because I feel like that's how we mitigate the bigger problems, and we keep the transparency in place. Having said that, as Commissioner Jones pointed out, I wasn't here on this body for the original approval, but one of the things that I saw in the changes really disturbed me about how things that could have been caught by the applicant and staff at the very beginning have significantly contributed to the reason why we're all here tonight. And one of those is the unit size. And I think that could and should have been addressed right from the get-go, and that would have eliminated so much of this conversation. Similarly, the lack of a covered stairwell. We've had this happen time and time again, and frankly, my recommendation to staff is don't ever let it happen again, because it will come back and it will have a covering on it, and it will create a projection that it's appropriate to share with this body and with the public. I mean, who builds a stairwell that becomes a giant funnel for water? It just doesn't make any sense. So that, and the fact that the missed ADA space and the parking, just those things, that attention to detail would have mitigated a lot of these problems. I think, as we've all sussed and the community has pointed out, the really big issue is the transformer. And honestly, I'm having a great deal of difficulty figuring out how one little transformer, depending on who you talk to, it's little or big, is causing a displacement of 16 parking places. To me, that's a failure in design. I cannot fathom how that is possible. We've had these put under driveways time and time again. They've worked. It's, and by the way, in staff's previous memo, I will agree with the public. I read it that it was at Edison's direction that change happened. The way staff's memo was written made it sound like that was at Edison's direction, that the applicant had no discretion. And that is clearly not correct. And so I encourage you to work on your language in that respect, because that's how I read it as well. This is kind of a death by 1,000 cuts again, Oh, yes, it's taller, but it's plus or minus okay. Oh, yes, it's bigger by, only 4,000 square feet. I don't know about you, but I live in a lot smaller space than 4,000 square feet. So what do we do? I would agree that the city code and the state housing law really has us hamstrung in terms of our ability to grant this appeal. It's painful, and like I said, one man's major is another man's minor, and some of this is objective and some of it isn't. That big transformer fundamentally changes the front of the building, and I was very disappointed that the renderings didn't show it properly. I think that when you're talking about something that significant, that the renderings didn't reveal it in a way that made any sense to anybody who didn't know how to read plans in detail. And frankly, I would encourage the applicant to go back and think about that transformer and really, really, really look at it. You've already got an approval for it to be underground. You wouldn't need to come back to this body. It would be fair to the neighborhood because it was one of the fundamental agreements that was made both with the public and with this body when it was approved. So to say, can't be bothered, just feels very disingenuous. With that, I am very distressed that I feel like I have to make the findings that are presented in this staff report because of the way our city code is written and because of the Housing Affordability Act. But I don't find that that makes for a good project. I don't find it makes for good neighbors. And I feel very distressed that we're in this position. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've heard of everyone. I guess it's my turn now. So first of all, I just want to say everyone here has been so thoughtful with what you've said today. So I'm going to try not to reiterate too much, but I was really impressed with how you've all looked at this. What I really wanted to start with personally is, first, I do want to acknowledge and thank public for being as involved as you could be throughout this process. One reason you see me looking down a lot is I'm taking a lot of notes. And I remember from the very first design review subcommittee meeting, which I believe Stacy was chairing, we tried to even take the initiative to allow a little more dialogue and really hear from you all. However, we work in quite a strong guardrail here, especially more so today than several years back. So that kind of gets us to where we are. And I can see and feel the sentiment that maybe everyone here wants to be heard and sees that there's changes. And just to give some perspective on my end, when I first got wind of the changes that were being proposed, they did actually feel substantial to me as well. Thank you, staff, for agendizing on consent, exactly what was happening for transparency at the director's level. For anyone that saw that meeting, I believe, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know I made a choice to be silent to preserve the ability to speak today and not create or cloud any decisions or judgment or potentially compromise what we're doing today. So that was one reason there was some silence there, just to kind of explain my thought in that process and why I made an effort to help kind of nudge this along so we could have this discussion today. So the changes did feel pretty substantial when I first looked at it, and as I dug deeper, I started to look at what they really meant, the massing of the building, in comparison to the shifts that are occurring, and digging into each element. And I think the death by 1,000 cuts analogy is a great one. You know, each item itself is relatively innocuous, but there are a lot of them. As I've heard public comments today, I've kind of looked at it again and gone back to some of my initial thoughts that I see why there's concern. There always has been for this building. So this then puts us in the sort of view of, okay, well, there's changes. I'm not going to get into, the process or why or what, but staff noticed the meeting and we're here today and we're looking at whether this is minor or major. And I see the changes and I see the impacts. I also see the trend of wanting to be heard and having the building address the community's needs, and then also the changes that are impacting the community. but has been reiterated by legal, by staff, Commissioner Matos. When we look at these changes, it becomes challenging, in my opinion, to be able to call anything major. And I do feel like one of the bigger elements is probably the transformer, based on what we've heard today. And as much as I want to press on that, the parking scares me because I see that as a need too, even though it's not a requirement. It can be an issue, and it's a reality. We've got a lot of units, and there's parking is a benefit to be had. So how that's handled, I'm not sure, but I agree that it would be a wonderful thing if the applicant could creatively look at that and think about how it may be possible to address the transformer. In terms of the overall aesthetic of the building, I think that, just looking at it from street level, I see how some things have grown a little bit. I also see how some of the solid massings have actually broken up a little, in particular in the west and southern side with those balconies. So I think it really does come down to just a couple of elements, including the transformer. And then in the context of, we've always struggled with this project here when we've heard it. So I'm not harking back to that again, but this is a large project, and so we've always kind of had to look at it that way, and it's a lot for everyone to digest. But there's limits to what we can deny. There haven't been any substantial changes to the concessions, and so I'm really looking at it in terms of what's minor or major, and I'm struggling to find something that would hold up right now. But I share a lot of the concerns that the community has, and I wish I could do something, but I don't know what that would be. So at the moment, I'm not seeing a way to really affect much change here, other than to say that yes, there's been change, and it's unfortunate, maybe some of the aspects, and there's a little bit of impact on the community, but we have limitations to what we can do right now here. There's a 100% affordable housing project in front of us, and so that's the lens that we're looking at it from. It's housing, and in a macro level, it's similar to what we originally had. So I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in or add on that. Thanks for hearing my ramble, but I feel like ultimately, perhaps this could have just come to us first, but either way, I don't know if anything has crossed that threshold of being a major change. Perhaps there could be some discussion or a statement to maybe compel the client, the applicant, to look at making some improvements, but I don't know what else we could do. Would anyone like to?
I'll be happy to make a motion.
Okay, so the vice chair is going to make a motion. Please state your motion.
I guess in light of the discussion of the commissioners tonight, I would
to the microphone, please.
I would move that we approve staff's recommendation.
Second. Okay, seconded by Commissioner Solomon. Is there any further discussion, or shall we vote? Okay.
And the motion passes unanimously with 7 ayes. This does have an appeal process. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees. And officially that approves resolution number 25-1602.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, I think there's some interest in a break up here. So 5-minute break, 10-minute break? Let's try for 5. Thank you. Let's reconvene. Suddenly the room feels very empty. Okay. Our next item is 11A. This is a public hearing, section 2, other items that require a public hearing under the law. This is a zone text amendment for shared housing buildings and shared housing units, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Tahira Ferris with the Community Development Department. This evening I will be presenting a zone text amendment for shared housing. I'll try to get this done in less than 10 minutes. So we'll just go over some background and then the proposed amendments, brief public outreach, and then staff's recommendation. So shared housing, which is also known as co-living, is an increasingly popular form of multifamily housing that is often more affordable than traditional multifamily housing, and it does provide a unique living experience with shared common spaces such as kitchens, dining areas, and recreational spaces. In some cases, units may come fully furnished, and also the buildings may offer a variety of amenities and services such as cleaning services or even social events. And typically, there's an all-inclusive price for rent, or there may be like a flat fee to cover a range of services that are provided. The city's housing element program number 17 identifies an objective to define and permit creative housing types such as co-living or shared housing, micro units, residential and commercial subdivisions, and other flexible housing types to increase opportunities for affordability and home ownership within the city. The zone text amendment also supports the city's ongoing efforts to encourage diverse housing in alignment with these various housing element goals that are listed on the screen. And in addition, this item was also part of a city council directive back in June of 2021. So now going over the going over the proposed amendment, we are adding some definitions to the zoning code for shared housing buildings and shared housing units. These definitions largely come from state density bonus law, where shared housing is defined. Development is required to have at least 75% shared housing units to be considered a shared housing building. This is mainly for the purposes of density bonus law, and therefore shared housing buildings may also incorporate other types of dwelling units, as well as incidental commercial uses if the commercial uses are located on the ground floor or the level that's closest to the street. Shared housing units do count as individual dwelling units in this case, and they will contain at least one private room as well as a private bathroom, and they would be used for permanent residency. This slide is just showing a potential floor layout for shared housing. So in this example here, there are 6 units, and then there's shared living spaces, common spaces, as well as dining areas and living spaces. Shared housing will generally be allowed where multifamily is currently allowed today. So shared housing developments would have to comply with existing multifamily standards for open space and design. The communal spaces would be required to be properly maintained by the building owners, and there would be an operations and management plan required to be submitted to the community development director as part of the development application. And then additionally, state law requires that buildings with 16 or more units have on-site 24-hour management. Shared housing units would be required to be accessible directly from the common kitchen, dining, or living areas that they share, and they cannot have a separate external entrance. And then we also have minimum square footage dedicated to each unit within the shared common spaces. There are additional minimum kitchen standards required based on the number of shared housing units as well to be provided within those common kitchen spaces. And then open space would be required to be provided, similar to the requirement that is for micro units, so 70 square feet per unit for private open space. And then there's additional requirements for storage, both within the unit itself for closet storage, as well as outside of the unit for utility storage and cleaning supply room. And then, as with the current existing multifamily standards, laundry facilities are required to be either provided in unit or one washer and dryer per 12 units within the building. So outreach that was done, it actually began a few years back. As I mentioned, there was a city council directive in June of 2021, and then some outreach went to the Governmental Affairs Committee, and then followed by the Long Range Planning Subcommittee in March of 2023 with some recommendations to the standards. We then put this on our Engage WeHo page for public input back in May and June of last year, and we received just a couple comments at that point. One was very much in favor of any additional housing for the city, and another one just had a comment or concern about parking. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and staff is recommending to adopt the resolution, recommending City Council approve the zone text amendment, adopting new policies and regulations, and development standards and definitions for shared housing buildings and shared housing units, and finding the action exempt from CEQA. And staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Any staff questions? I'm going to start, John, from my far right over. Commissioner Solomon?
I just have one quick question for legal, and it relates to this project, but also to kind of all projects that we approve that have this in the resolution. So I'm looking at the red line ordinance on page 4 or 5, and we make the statement about the 24-hour on-site management, which is required under state law, which is a crazy requirement that if something has 16 or more units, you have to have on-site management. What if that state law were ever repealed or changed? For the projects that we've approved, we say 16 units because of state law. What if the state law changes? Does that change the underlying?
It's a good question, Commissioner Solomon. I think at a baseline level, staff would be reviewing the code and the CCR to see whether that's still a requirement. But I think one option for the commission, once it moves to deliberation, would be to add right after the code site to just say comma as amended, or from time to time. If that provides a little more comfort, because
for this one, sure, but I mean, we've passed tons of projects where we've probably, I bet somebody just copied this language from a prior resolution. So I'm kind of wondering about other projects too. What would you all do?
So I guess it would depend on how the state law changed, but typically if the state law is changed in a way that nullifies local ordinance, then state law would prevail regardless of what the ordinance says. But we do monitor state laws as they impact the city regulations to make sure that we're in compliance. So from time to time, we do have to update things just to, for clarity.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoopengarner, and then Commissioner Jones.
Okay, so can we start with the definition of a shared unit? Because I'm confused. A shared housing unit means a self-contained living space that is not within another dwelling unit. It includes at least one habitable room with a bathroom, as well as a sink, refrigerator, and microwave. Is that sink in addition to the one in the bathroom?
So this definition is largely from the state density bonus law, and it does not specify that there needs to be a separate sink. So
that's really confusing.
They're also in the state density bonus law for shared housing, it also doesn't specify that there needs to be a full bathroom. That's a change that the city decided to make. So we actually are requiring a full bathroom as opposed to just a partial bathroom, which could be allowed in other jurisdictions.
Well, in that case, I mean, why would we have, because the way this is written, how would you have a bathroom without a sink? And if you have a bathroom with a sink, why do you need another sink?
So I believe the sink in this case is referring to sort of the little, I don't, you might want to call it like a kitchenette or
Kitchenette
space.
sink, I understand,
So,
but,
yeah.
but I want to make sure, is that the intent? That there
Yes.
is additionally a kitchenette sink in a single unit in addition to the bathroom?
Yeah, that's the intent with the way it's written. Yeah.
Okay, so this is all separate from the shared kitchen space?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I just, because that's, could be very confusing. All right. Mail services. Each shared housing unit shall have a separate designated mailbox. So I just want to be, again, super clear, because this came up on one of our prior approvals, that the individual in that unit has a private mailbox. It is not a shared mailbox by the whole commune.
Correct. So the way that the code is written is that each bedroom that has its own private bathroom is a separate unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, okay. Let's go to the living areas and the dining room area. So it's 100 square feet of shared living areas, a minimum, and then a minimum of 30 square feet of a dining area. How does that work if someone comes in with a design and it's just this big hunk of space that's 130 square feet? Is that okay? Or do you have to somehow designate a dining space? I'm worried about limitations to design. I mean, does it make sense to have a separate call out for a dining space, or should we just increase the shared living area to a proper square footage? I'm trying to understand the rationale for this and how it would actually work in practicality.
So the shared housing does require that there are common dining areas that are adequate to serve the building residents.
Mhm.
So the intention is just that there is adequate space for those units. The intention is also that there is flexibility in how it is designed. So the example that we showed was one potential design. The layout could look different as long as the square footage actually meets the requirements.
So in the
per
end, we're
bedroom.
talking about 130 square feet.
Depending on how many bedrooms, yeah.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, I mean, Commissioner Caballero, you can probably speak to this, but you could have 130 square feet, but you could have it configured in such a way as that you couldn't actually fit a dining table, you know? How does that work?
It would be per unit. So if there are, 6 units or so, you would need the appropriate space for each of those units combined.
What do you mean per unit? This is the shared living space.
Yeah. So, let me go to which. So on page 11 of the resolution and ordinance is you're looking at minimum shared living areas. Is that correct?
Well, I was looking at the staff report, but yeah.
Okay, so the common living area has a minimum of 100 square feet per shared housing unit. So if there are 4 bedrooms, that's 400 square feet total.
Okay.
For the dining area, the 30 square feet is also per unit, so it would be 30 times however many
Okay.
units.
All right. So refrigerator is X, amount of refrigerator space for every 4 housing units. Cooking facilities, X for every 4 housing units, et cetera. But then when we get down to utility storage, it's 20 square feet per every 5 shared housing units. So I'm wondering why we're sort of setting a baseline of every 4 units down the page, and then we get to the utility storage, and now it jumps to 5.
I don't think there was a specific intention to separate out that in such a different way, except the fact that the utility storage is not as, would not be as large of space required.
It just seems weird to have a, 444 and then jump to 5. And potentially confusing to people that have to read it. Okay. So back to the refrigerator, and it's talking about 18 cubic feet capacity for every 4 shared housing units. So, in the example of the project that we had at Fountain and Fairfax, that was 5 units per commune. And in that case, would they have to have 2 refrigerators because it talks about or fraction thereof?
Yes, if it's presented as a shared housing project, then yeah, that's
So then
correct.
they would have to have 2 18 cubic foot
Correct.
refrigerators for the 5 units.
Yes.
Okay. I want to try like the application of this, make sure that it works correctly. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So on, what page is this on? Page 3 of the staff report, under long-range planning project subcommittee feedback, I know there was a comment about pets being regulated according to existing city policies. My question is this: do we need to have a conversation, because I don't see it enumerated in the reso or in the red line, do we have an existing city policy on pets that would apply to shared housing? I'm asking because in a situation like, if someone's allergic to a cat, you don't want someone with a cat like living in a, do you know what I'm saying? Like, so go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so residents would self-select. So if someone is moving into a unit where another resident has a cat, they know they're allergic, they probably would not choose to move in there.
Right, but what if you're living in a unit and someone with a cat moves in?
I would imagine there'd be some discussion between management and who they're leasing to make sure, that their tenants are gonna, and again, the bedrooms are separate. So
Right.
each bedroom, bathroom, suite, it's almost like, think of like a studio
It's like a
unit.
dorm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Okay.
So if your cat's in there and not in the shared space.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I know, as a city, we've been pretty progressive regarding our policies about people's ability to have pets in their homes, beyond even just like an emotional support animal. So I just want to make sure that that's something that is, and maybe it's something that would be addressed in like lease agreements or whatever, but it's just something I wanted to surface because
Yeah.
like as much as I love dogs and cats, not everybody does. So it's kind of like people like have dogs on an airplane. Like not everybody wants to sit next to a dog,
Right.
So I just want to make sure that's something that we've at least considered.
What about
Yeah, and
disclosure?
Sorry?
What about disclosure? It's a good question. I mean, what about, the requirement to disclose before you lease kind of thing? I don't know. I'm just saying that here's a unit, it's available, take it. Oops, by the way, there's a cat, or oops.
These are management issues, though. I would think that would, sorry, I'm kind of speaking out of turn.
No.
but-
It's valid. I mean, I wanted there to be discussion about it because I think, again.
We are discussing before public comment, but.
I don't appreciate all the cat hate that's coming out. There are other animals to pick on than just cats.
Okay, your capybara. Okay. Your goldfish. I'm just saying, I wouldn't want anyone's rights as they are enumerated in West Hollywood city policy to be violated because of someone living in this situation where they are living in closer proximity. But I think Ruggerio's right. I think it could be addressed in like a lease or like a management situation. So I just wanted to make sure that was surfaced. That's all. That's my only question.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Carvalero.
Just one question, because I can't find it in the staff report, but I read something about a minimum 30-day or 31-day, day lease. But don't we have, last time, when that project at the corner of Fairfax and Fountain came to, I remember us talking a lot about minimum 1-year lease.
So the city's current policy is a minimum 1-year lease requirement.
Right.
So everything would be,
Okay.
subject to that.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one question. It relates to, and I mentioned this in a discussion with staff this week too. The door, I know that we had a discussion about the limitation of not having a door to the outside. The only means of entrance is through the main door. So I'll ask this as a question, because I didn't think about this before. Is this because it's a matter of safety, that someone could enter from the outside and go through a unit, and then they'd be in the common area, and then could enter an unlocked unit, versus a more controlled entrance?
So yeah, that, and also going back to kind of the history of where this came from, I think there was previously a conversation about distinguishing these types of housing developments from SRO units, and so that was also part of the intent, is that residents would enter into a private common space, and it would be a select number of people that enter into that private common space, and then they would enter into their units from off those common areas.
Okay, thank you. But it's the only question I have. Are there other questions? No? Do we have any public comments? I don't see anyone here. Is there anyone in Zoom?
Chair, we have no public comments.
Okay. Do you want to move on to deliberation? Commissioner Solomon?
I met yesterday with Tahira and Nick to talk more about this. Thank you so much for your time. And Tahira informed me that there's only one other city in the whole state of California, to all of our knowledge, that has adopted, codified co-living or shared housing. And ChatGPT confirmed that for me personally as well. And that's San Jose, California. So I went to, dug into their ordinance to look at what their code says. And it's very, very different than what is being proposed tonight. I don't think theirs is perfect either. But what stood out to me whenever I reviewed this is I hate interior regulations. I don't think it's the job of the Planning Commission to talk about how big your kitchen counter must be. I feel like in conversations we've had past, we encourage having flexibility for the builder developer, and at the end of the day, it is, Tahira, would you say it is a resident opt-in decision? I mean, you don't have to live there if it's not.
Correct. Yeah.
However you phrased it. So this really sticks out to me in that we very much define kitchen counter space. We say that we have to have a private full bathroom plus a sink plus a kitchenette in each room. San Jose doesn't do that. I think the private bathroom works, but their calculation for how much common area is given per unit is 20 square feet. Might be too small. Ours is 100. They do not require the building owner to do maintenance. I guess those people clean their own kitchens, like the rest of us. We do. There's just a number of different. Ours is the most regulated I can imagine. And I get that shared living, co-living is a very different housing typology, and there might need to be some interior regulations. We do need to have a minimum common space per bedroom. I don't know that we need to have a minimum on kitchen counters, but I think that, to me, the best answer is probably something in between, where our only other precedent example in the state lies. And I'm curious if anyone else feels that way about the sort of regulations that we're setting out here. And curious about, if so, if we want to try and nitpick this to death tonight, or if we want to give instruction otherwise to take it and put with that instruction and come back.
Which provisions are you specifically calling out issue with, Commissioner Solomon?
Okay, so I had ChatGPT run a comparison of the two ordinances. So here's some big highlights. The bathrooms that I mentioned in San Jose, there is no requirement for an in-unit, separate from the bathroom sink, an in-unit sink or an in-unit kitchenette. San Jose is required to have a closet inside, but no specification on the size of that closet. Ours says it has to be 60 cubic square feet. Plus, then we have the utility closet on top of that. That is, the utility closet is also not in the San Jose. San Jose for living area is 20 square feet per bedroom. Ours is 100 square feet per bedroom. San Jose has no dining area requirement. Ours has 30 square feet per unit. San Jose doesn't. San Jose says that there has to be an adequate kitchen per every 6 units. We go so far as to say like what the appliances should be in that kitchen. Washer dryer, theirs is 1 washer dryer per 20 units. Ours is per 12. Both include an operations plan. San Jose does not have the maintenance plan. There's, and then some open space requirements we have that they don't. Again, I don't think that their idea of it is perfect. I wouldn't necessarily want to live in a building that's designed to those standards, but this, as it's laid out tonight, with so much specificity and rigidity on interior requirements, to me doesn't align with sort of previous decision making that we've laid out specifically in our micro unit conversation.
Could I just make a comment, though, that San Jose is a college town. It's a very different community than this town. So I think that might be a factor in their decision for their projects.
Okay. I know Commissioner Carvalero has been waiting patiently, and then Commissioner Matos, I don't know if you were had more questions, and then Commissioner Jones.
You know, it's an interesting conversation, and I'm all about it. But I want to ask, does staff, were these recommendations or minimums based on the project that came to us at Fountain and Fairfax? Because they seem to align very much with that project.
So I'll speak a little bit to that, and maybe I'll ask Jen to chime in. The project was before my time, but from what I understand, that project did spur some conversation.
Yeah.
And there were probably some comments from the commission at that time that guided staff's research and putting together regulations. The city staff also back then worked with an outside architect to look at different models.
Yep.
And so I think it was a combination of all of those things
Okay.
to put together some regulations.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because a lot of it, when I was reading through the staff report, it's just like, oh, I remember this, I remember that. I mean, for me, from a design standpoint, I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner Solomon, but at the same time, I think it's good to have some minimums. You know, because the first thing I was thinking is, okay, if you have 5 unit or 5 bedroom units, or if you have 3, I mean, my mind went through, okay, if everybody's getting home at 6 o'clock and they all want to cook dinner, is 4 burners enough? Or do we need 8 burners? You know, the refrigerator thing jumped out at me immediately. It's like, is 1 refrigerator enough for 5 units? So, I mean, from a design perspective, I believe we have the consciousness to think through these things, and that a developer wouldn't think that 5 units could sufficiently work with 4 burners, because that's how I think of it as burners, not in terms of stoves, because, you know, how do you make dinner between 6 and 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock when you have, you know, minimum 5 people and maybe maximum 10 people? So that goes back just to say that I do think that some of the minimums are okay, though I know that also that pushes it up into a different sort of cost range, you know? So the flexibility that they have in San Jose makes sense. You know, it's sort of, it maybe speaks to a different financial model than what we're trying to address. And I guess that would be my question, you know, what is affordable in regards to what we can build in this city, and then how that trickles down to actual rents. It's a whole other conversation, but basically the minimum, I think the minimums are okay. I don't think it's too restrictive. And I'm assuming that if a project came through, like we just discussed in the previous project, there is an evolution as it goes through all the divisions and as it goes through planning where, you know, these things could be fine-tuned.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Solomon, for bringing this to our attention. I think when I look at this, I agree with Commissioner Carvallero. When you look at this type of housing, it's to create new housing opportunities in the community for people that want to live here. I agree with that at every core of its statement. But when you look at this, I mean, I don't know if these minimums that are outlined in the ZTA would impact either A, the availability of more housing, like would reducing a closet minimum actually result in a net gain of any units? I don't know. I don't believe so. And then would, you know, requirement of extra counter space or a refrigerator result in burdensome costs to a project? I'm not inclined to think so. So, I mean, when we look at housing, I think to your point, we want to look at it from A, affordability and the cost of development, and B, the creation of additional housing opportunities for people. I actually do believe that this ZTA gets us closer to both of those things, while also keeping a minimum standard of living requirement that is not burdensome to either of those housing goals that have been the stated goals and objectives of the city and the city council, which is to build more housing more affordably. So in that realm of way of thinking, I don't know if now would be the time to start, you know, undoing minimums. I actually think that this is pretty balanced of an approach, at least from my perspective.
Okay, I know Commissioner Jones wanted to speak.
Sorry, Commissioner Carvallero. I'll make this very quick. Look, I think, again, I think Commissioner Solomon, like, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a legitimate point, but something that Commissioner Carvallero said at a planning meeting, probably more than one commission meeting a while back, was just that we have to have a starting point of some kind. It's like, I do think it's okay to say, like, here's the minimum standard of living that we would want someone to have in a shared housing unit. And, you know, the rest of these are guidelines that I hope would be, you know, we could make considerations for changes down the road, but it's like, I think it's good to have kind of a baseline. We can kind of figure it out as we go. I don't think we have to, like, overreach, so to speak, and, like, you know, set it all in stone. But I think this is a good starting point. I feel good with the minimums that are listed here. So that's kind of that's my take.
Commissioner Carvallero, and then Commissioner Hoopengardner.
I find this conversation really interesting because then the minimums, I get it, but then you go back to affordability. When that project at Fairfax and Fountain came to us, it didn't have any closets. We were like, where are the closets? You know, it was like, and they would provide furniture that would create the closet, like an armoire or something, and we were all like scratching our heads. But from a developer's point of view, it's like, okay, they're trying to reduce the cost, which could reduce the rent, which makes it more affordable. So are our minimums triggering higher rents because it's going to be a more expensive, you know, development in the end? And that's not something I can answer, but it just kind of makes sense. The more minimums we have, the higher the cost is going to be. How does that meet our affordable rents or problem?
Well, I think that your point is taken in terms of, you know, a minimum you must have a jacuzzi, you know, a minimum you must have a, you know, whatever. And the question is, and I think Commissioner Jones, you know, phrased it beautifully. What are the minimum standards of living that we want in our community? Are we building, Eastern Europe 1950s bare standards minimum housing, or are we building a community? Are we building a place where people want to live? And you want to build a successful project that creates its demand. You want a waiting list for these places because they're really great. And I think what staff has done here is commendable. I think you've really threaded the needle of creating some minimums that are practicable, that are not onerous, and at the end of the day, if an applicant were to come to us and say, yeah, I can do that, I can do that, but this one thing, here's my suggestion, I really want a mod to make it this. How often do we say no to that? Not very often, if ever. So I think that this creates a good baseline, and like any of our new ordinances, it will be back. And we will discover that, oops, that was an unintended consequence. We didn't really think that through. But I think that as a baseline, this is pretty darn good, and addresses precisely the issues that came up on Fairfax and Fountain, because we had some big issues on that one. And it's the reason for this. And, it's taken us a couple years, but we're here. And I think that my inclination is to say, yes, let's move forward with this. Now we have some standards. Now we have some guidelines that developers can work with. Let's 4 feet of counter space is nothing for 5 people cooking in a kitchen. To your point, who gets the burners? I don't know about you, but when I cook, I usually need at least 2. And so a lot of people are going to order takeout or whatever, and they have different schedules, but it's going to be tight as it is. And so I think that the minimums that we're discussing are not onerous. Short of not having a kitchen, which then it's no longer shared housing, So my inclination is to say, yes, let's make a motion and approve what staff has proposed.
Can I ask, what did y'all do for the cleaning maintenance on Fairfax and Fountain? It's included?
Yeah, it was included.
It was included. And that was one of the reasons that you could get away with, in air quotes, not having a utility closet, was because it was a provided service.
Right.
But that meant that there was no place to put a mop should there be a spill during the middle of the week. And that was one of the issues. So even if it was a provided service, you're going to want a broom. You're going to break something. You're going to drop something. And there was no place to put it in that project as it was originally proposed.
Okay, thank you. Similar sentiments. I appreciate the desire to better define this housing type, and I definitely was looking at this toward a lens to there could be a floor or a bar that could become very, very low, and so I'm trying to understand the balance between affordable housing and different housing types, and then also making sure that there's a quality of life factor there. And so it seems reasonable to me what I see listed out. It doesn't seem like a wild ask. As we know, there's a lot of opportunity for modifications, concessions, waivers, all sorts of stuff. So I do think it's good to maybe set some things that are clear. And if something does turn up to be an issue, then I think there are methods for that to be revisited again. And I again feel like housing has certain needs, like a sink, like burners to cook. And so I think what we're just trying to do is we're realizing that this project type is, really compacting everything. And so we just want to make sure that there's something there. So I think it's just trying to define that need, less someone get really creative with something and it go missing. I'd also say from the design end, obviously, all this pencils into some level of cost, but it can be very helpful to design not that I'm one that likes more regulation or limiting factors, but there are times where I feel like being able to point to something and say, well, we have to provide these things, then allows you to build a design off of that versus potentially getting in a precarious situation as a designer where you may be asked to take away things that you feel may not make the project successful. So sometimes it can be helpful to have a little bit to point to too. And I would hope that with the relatively small asks that I feel these are, it would be, you know, kind of part of the basic needs of housing, and it's something they'd be trying to do anyway. So I'm not sure what's happening in San Jose, you know, but be interesting to compare, I guess, in the long run. So I'm inclined to, you know, move forward with it. I thought that I saw a motion from Gregoire, but I also see Hoopengarner, and now it's
I'm happy to have someone else make the motion, but I wanted to make a few
I pushed
comments.
the button and I saw Mr. Matos.
I seconded.
I saw David Gregoire's too.
I think yours was carryover from the last one because I noticed at the beginning of the meeting
Oh,
that
yeah.
that's
what I was wondering.
It said vice.
It's been there for a long time.
It's been on there for a minute. I don't know. This thing works weird.
And I had my motion here and now it's gone.
But I thought, so.
I seconded the motion for the record.
Excluding the one that was sitting there for a very long time, which I thought was just your, you know, I saw Hoopengarner's and then I saw Macho's second. So if you're okay with that, Vice Chair.
I haven't actually gotten to speak yet on this.
Oh, that's
item.
true. Would you like to speak?
But no, that was from the prior matter. So
okay, hence the
I'm happy
confusion.
for someone else to eventually make the motion.
Thank you. I thought you were just ready to motion and.
Yeah. So I do support staff's recommendation, although I struggled with this one a little bit. You know, I just want to think out loud for a second about this. Micro units, shared units, I sort of view them as experimental. So in a way, I appreciate Commissioner Solomon's thoughts about it. Well, we shouldn't micromanage it too much. But I think I'm more persuaded by we probably should set minimum standards for something like this. So that's why I support staff's recommendation. But a few other thoughts I had just thinking about this afternoon. I'm not sure how the city really views shared housing or micro units, right? Like in my mind, this is short-term housing. Micro units, shared housing, this is short-term housing, but under the city ordinance, we require minimum 1-year leases. That doesn't do any good if you're a nurse at Cedars-Sinai and you're looking for a 3 or 4 or a 6-month lease. I do think the city should have micro units and shared units generally available for short term. But I'm not sure this is what this is designed for because we have a minimum 1-year lease requirement in the city. I guess a rhetorical question is, do we view this as housing where someone's going to move into this unit and become a long-term resident of the city of West Hollywood? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure this is the type of thing we would view that way. And the only reason I raise these issues is because it actually affects my thinking about what those minimum standards should be, right? If this is truly a place where a nurse working at Cedars-Sinai is going to move in for 4 months, I don't know how fancy the unit needs to be. But if we're thinking people are going to move into a shared unit for many years and become a long-term resident of the city, I do think we should ensure that there are minimum standards. My first unit that I moved into in West Hollywood a long time ago had a 2-burner stove and an oven that was only a little bit bigger than, what was that from childhood, Jiffy Bake oven? Like, you couldn't cook anything in that oven. If you don't set minimum standards, you know, you're going to get the unit I moved into when I first moved to West Hollywood, which really did not have an adequate kitchen. So that's just a few thoughts to think about in the weeks and months to come. You know, how do we view these units? Short-term housing, long-term housing.
I'm not sure these are ever really going to be long-term housing. But if we do view them as long-term housing, yes, I think we should have some minimum standards. And, you know, we'll experiment with this, and if after a few years, developers look at this and say, this doesn't work for us, the city's gonna get feedback, and then staff can come back to us with some proposed amendments to the ordinance. And we'll consider those proposed amendments when the time comes. But I'm prepared to support staff's recommendation on this item.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Carvalho.
Yeah, so Vice Chair Gregoire, I really appreciate your comments, but I'm always thinking, okay, what if 5 seniors move in here for a period of 10 years and they create a family? It's not just young people, and micro units, we haven't unfortunately, you know, sort of created micro units there across the country, and there are models like the ones that we're discussing today throughout Los Angeles, which are a great success. So I feel comfortable and secure that this is not a risky take, and it's a good sort of, like you said, it's a good basis for different housing living opportunities that can be affordable for anybody, from somebody who just got out of school to a senior who doesn't, you know, who wants to share, doesn't want to live alone.
Okay. I agree with that. I feel like these are sort of, there's a bigger picture thing that maybe is somewhat market driven, and there could be some adjustments on that down the road. And this is really just about the units themselves. So depending on that policy, it could change things too, but I see them as separate baskets. They may have an influence on how much of this we see, but because, you know, right now, someone that wants to do a shorter term housing that's set up like this wouldn't be able to, but there's also probably other scenarios. So that may drive how much of it we see in the city. But I know Commissioner Hoopengarter made a motion. Did you want to state the motion? And then we already have a seconder.
Yeah, I seconded her motion.
My motion is, let's do it.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Okay, and just to note on the record, the motion then is to move staff's recommendation forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the translation.
And the motion passes on 6 ayes, noting Commissioner Solomon voting no. This is a recommendation to City Council approving resolution number PC 251595. So there will be no appeal process.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, new business, we have done. Item 13, unfinished business, no items. Also no items for number 14, excluded consent calendar. Number 15, items from staff. 15A, planning manager's update.
Yes, so I'll give the planning manager's update. The next meeting will be May 1st, as the April 17th meeting is canceled. So there are a few items on the agenda. We have a consent calendar item to bring the general plan annual progress report and housing element annual progress report. And then there are 3 public hearings. There's an appeal for 8451 Melrose Avenue. And then there is a subdivision at 852 West Knoll Drive. And then there's also a zone text amendment for EV charging stations. Then at the May 15th meeting, we also have a number of public hearing items. There is a conditional use permit amendment for 8300 Sunset Boulevard, and then a 3-story mixed-use proposal for 409 Robertson Boulevard. And there's also going to be a zone text amendment for accessory business uses. And then additionally, on May 15th, we do have a long-range planning project subcommittee meeting with a zone text amendment to discuss specialized housing and emergency housing, which covers emergency shelters and permanent supportive housing. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions or notes? I do have one. I will unfortunately not be able to be at the May 1st Planning Commission meeting, although I guess I don't want to assume anything right now since there's a process that's happening right now with that large appointments. But it's my cousin's wedding, so I will be there. So just wanted to put that on the record. Anyone else? Okay. So item 16, public comment. Is there anyone here? No? Okay. Item 17, items from commissioners. Yes?
Just want to thank everybody for their continued service. It's been an honor serving with all of you for the past three and a half years. And I really enjoy coming to these meetings on Thursdays and having robust conversation. It's clear everyone up here cares about the city. And I've really enjoyed my time with you all, so thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I just want to say the same. Just congrats to everyone. It really is a privilege to serve with all of you, and I hope everyone can continue to serve here together. I also just wanted to give my heartiest congrats to our director. Like I said, if you need anything, call me.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I know this was a challenging meeting, and I feel like we all handled it very, very well and responsibly, and I'm so thrilled that you all are still here, and I'm going to say I hope I get to see you guys soon here. Thank you. And, see, it's getting late. So I will adjourn this meeting. The next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting will actually be on Thursday, May 1st, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Council Chambers. Thank you.